It's just a little bit to the left there.
Board meeting we had over there when it got so heated about
I start falling asleep, throws at me. I forgot my zip fizz.
I might go to the potty.
I forgot my zip fizz, so I need, if I get sleepy. It's, well, it's a high dose vitamin powder that has a little bit of caffeine in it.
She's on.
It's only, isn't it only a cup of coffee?
So
I drink 4 cups of coffee in the morning, so 1 cup of coffee is not gonna kill me.
Well, if you already drank 4, that's not just 1, is it?
No. It's my afternoon, get me through
You know, I can tell you, I would have never dreamed that this is where I'd be sitting someday. It was not on my radar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Celebration, kind of like homecoming, but they do it for spring sports, track, softball, baseball, golf, and tennis. And as part of that, every class does a lip sync for an assembly. And as a parent behind the scenes, my daughter was participating, and the lip syncs are always very entertaining. It's probably a little bit of a challenge for our staff to coach the kids to keep them clean, but they do it. So they were clean, they were fun, very entertaining. But as a parent, what I saw was a lot more than entertainment going on behind the scenes. I saw administrators and teachers who were being very flexible with their time and their schedule in order to just have fun and make memories with our kids. But also for the senior class, at least, they only had 2 days to create their lip sync, cut the music. They made a little teaching tape that they sent out to the entire senior class that showed all the moves and everything. They had only just the 2 days to practice. They had to gather the props. They ran into a few challenges that they had to problem solve. And what I saw out of them is that 30 kids participated overall, which is a very large number. And so we can kind of see the progression of a couple kids participating as freshmen to clear up to when seniors, there's a much larger group. I think that's fairly typical that they get a lot of spirit when they're seniors, but I saw them problem solve. They had one student who showed great prioritization because he realized that he actually couldn't participate when he had promised to because he had a work commitment. Another student had the courage to step in at the very last minute and fill that role. They showed teamwork. They showed leadership. They showed the ability to be led. They showed tech savvy by sending out their video ahead of time. And these they showed so much inclusiveness. There were kids from every friend group, every sport that participated. And these skills are the very skills that I hear over and over that employers want from our kids. And our school has done that. And at the same time, they enjoyed each other and had so much fun. And so I guess what I took away from that as a parent that I never had before until this year is that we raise our seniors and our staff helps and our administrators help and you help with all the service that you're giving. And of course, parents are doing it, but we have a little bit we could learn from our seniors too. And so as we move into this season of trying to pass a levy and potentially pass a school bond, I hope that we can come together as efficiently as our seniors with kindness, with inclusiveness, with teamwork, with the ability to lead and have courage and be led, and then at the same time to have fun with one another while we're doing all these things for school pride and for community pride. It was awesome. And so with that background in mind, I'd like to hand out these little QR codes because they actually recorded the lip sync. And so I figure with that background, you might like to watch it. If nothing else, it's entertaining. But with the other background, I hope you can see those skills that I've just mentioned. Our kids are going to rock it when they graduate. They're so amazing. So I'm proud to be a part of it, as usual. And then I'll leave some at the back for anyone else who wants to see the little video.
Thank you.
That'd be neat to see the staff do that,
It would be neat to see the staff do that.
like the police force.
Or
that does
hey, the board. I told my daughter, I'm like, flash mob next meeting.
all videotape.
We just don't want to do what Middleton did.
Oh, no. Okay, moving on, Mr. Alexander.
Just real quick, Greg Alexander, principal at Carberry. Was glad to have you guys last month at our school, and it was fun to showcase the kids. But I don't know, I just wanted to share some of the feedback that we had from there. Some folks were talking about, while it was neat to see the show and a couple of the songs that the kids got to do, the kids had to do some extra effort to get to do that, and then not all of them got to, and they were saying things like, I wish they would have been able to see our real show, the full show, and then parents that couldn't hear, people that were trying to hear what you guys were saying and not using the microphones or using the microphones, and and then the setup time for my staff to get it ready, to put it up, and and Ken coming over and just trying to work and coordinate. And I was like, well, I probably should say something about how that was just taking hours out of our time, and not that I don't want to have you guys come, but where we have a facility here in town, when I was up in Garden Valley, going up to Loman, once a year, just to let the people up in Loman know that, they're part of our community. However, down here in Emmett, similar to Garden Valley, we were able to have their meetings in the same room where people could get used to it. So I just wanted to share that we had some negative feedback of just comfortability. There are nicer chairs here than our metal chairs set up on our floors, the wood floors with our chairs, putting them out too many times in the year. So just a thought to maybe bring it back while district in Emmett City having board meetings just here so people can get used to where those are. Just some feedback.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Guest informational items, GCA report. Mrs. Castle.
Hi,
Hello.
is this on? Do you want it on?
Is it green?
It's green now. Hi, I wanted to let you know that we have finalized the honorees for the Teacher of the Year. Elementary School Teacher of the Year is my dear friend Vicki Renfro, who teaches third grade at Shadow Butte. The secondary Teacher of the Year is Katie Siebert. She teaches at the high school. She's the band director. Our education specialist, we selected 2 of those. Matt Macy, who's our district psychologist, and Chris Roper, who's our high school counselor. The elementary education support person is Shannon Anderson, who's our Century 21 grant director. And the secondary education support person is Sarah Cannon, who's in charge of the food service at the high school. We also have selected a friend of education, and we selected Priscilla Rich, who is a retired high school teacher from California who's been volunteering at Shadow Butte for about 6 years now on a regular basis. Wanted to also share with you a little bit about delegate assembly that 3 of us attended. Vicki Renfro, Joe Bauman, who teaches at the middle school, and myself. We joined about 400 other delegates to review and collaborate about the IEA goals and current legislature related to improving education. Also wanted you to know that IEA and GCA are in support of our local school levy, and we're ready to join the community in voting yes. And we're also in the process of reviewing scholarship applications because the GCA and the retired teachers joined together to give a scholarship in honor of Lorna Biggers. So, any questions? Have I missed anything?
And teacher banquet's the 16th of May,
May 15th
May 15th.
at 6 o'clock.
Thank you.
And it's going to be up at Willow Grove, which is the venue at Mesa and Central. She's given us a good deal for using her venue. So we're quite excited. It's already decorated.
Oh, great.
So we don't have to work on that.
And the time on that?
6 o'clock.
6.
That's at Ignacio's.
Pardon me?
Ignacio's.
Yes. And you guys are all invited. And if you have any questions, you can email me. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I knew you were gonna need one.
Okay, budget items. Bills. Mr. Tito.
Yes, I reviewed the bills this morning with the help of Jefferson. Because he's gonna take over next month, thank goodness. Not gonna be here. Bills were fairly normal. The total amount was $341,688.91. A few items that I thought were of interest. On page 1, there's a $47,000 payment and change to Capital One Public Financing. I understand this is a loan that we took out in 2002 that will be paid off in 2022. And it was for upgrades to multiple buildings, energy type savings, as I understand it. So that's going to go on for a few more years. Is that just once a year?
Twice.
Twice a year? Okay. On the next page, we had the resource officer, we paid $30,000 to the city of Emmett. That was a large figure.
I have a question. Mr. Rush, is that Deputy Conklin?
No.
Or is that a different?
No, it's we do a contract with the city police for a resource officer, and it's
Officer.
Amont, thank you.
Amont.
Officer Amont is
Okay.
the current resource officer.
Madam Chair, we don't pay 30,000 every month for that, do we?
No, we have a contract. We pay 30,000 and they pay the rest of his salary and benefits and all that. So we just do a check a year to the city.
Okay, that was my question. If I might, also we have a loan. I didn't know that we could indebt the district without, was that a bond issue or something back when or something? Or?
It was not a bond issue. It was done in 2002 and I wasn't around and I didn't ever deal with it. Obviously had nothing to do with the legal
Yeah,
issues.
I got that, but is that legal?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
Okay.
Actually a lease.
Okay, it's a lease. It's not a loan.
It's not a loan.
Okay.
It was a lease for 20 years.
Mr. Carter, did you have something?
Well, I just happened to be here at that time. That was the scene, that's when, for example, the boiler system, the heating system, and the windows at the middle school were all replaced, the same things and stuff. That was part of that energy efficiency, I believe it was, through Siemens. So,
Thank you.
Thank you for that. See if I had any other major questions here. Had a large expense for a software renewal, license milepost renewal. I don't know what milepost is, but anyone want to explain that? Wade, Cindy. There were two renewals, milepost and teachers.
Teacher VTake.
Yeah.
And if you look at the funding sources for those, some of those funds are actually allocated through grant programs and or state funds that are designated for this process. We use Milepost. It's a data gathering system that we use every day in our schools. It gathers information from students on a variety of tests so that teachers and all staff members can have instant access to that type of information. And a piece of that is a part of state funding that is given expressly for that purpose. And we also pay part of that out of some literacy improvement grant funds that I write and oversee. And so that's where part of that money comes from. Teacher Vitae is our evaluation software that is used for all certified staff and administrative staff in the district. And so it's a process that we use to maintain and control paperwork and submit required reports to the state. Does that help?
Yes.
Yes.
It didn't spell on the bill, at least that I saw, that part of it was grant money. I usually circle, it says grant, because I know that's not out of our pocket per se.
Yeah, the literacy improvement funds may not appear on as a grant fund just because of the way that they are processed from the district. It's money we receive every year, depending upon how our students perform on the Idaho Reading Indicator, which is a literacy test for K through third.
Thank you very much.
Bob, whereabouts are you looking at on that bill? I think a couple of us had a question. What was it titled? On the bill list?
Which
It's
one?
probably under Silverback.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There-
Silverback is a
okay,
parent
back solution.
company.
We were looking under
Yes.
milepost.
That's a parent
Oh,
company.
sorry.
And yet, two of the products that we purchased through them are called Milepost and Teacher Vitae.
Is that a one time a year?
It's an annual license, and the funds are provided by the state for an annual license.
Mr. Rush, did you have a question?
I was just gonna say the
Comment?
milepost part of it is a required piece of software that every district has to have. You don't have to have milepost, but you have to have that piece of software.
A piece of software that does what they do.
Equivalent. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Sophus Health was another one. That's basically, I call it our health insurance commission that we pay to Sophus Health. And it's $19.50 times 295 participants. The way we get to the figure, and the total amount was $57.52.
Okay.
Yeah, that was, there, let's see. There's a one that I can't figure which one it is right now. We bought a lot of musical instruments, and I thought that was great. That was for the high school. Other than that, I didn't find anything else that was out there. Right, Jefferson?
Right.
Question.
Yes, Mr. Jones.
Could you explain the Medicaid payment? Is that a once a month type deal, or does this escrow account go down and you just put money into it per se, or?
I'm not coming up.
Medicaid. It was
Oh, The
Medicaid.
Medicaid?
Medicaid?
Oh,
I was
Medic-
coming up for a different.
Medicaid payment. So we are able to bill Medicaid for services that we provide to special education students. But the requirement of billing Medicaid, we have to put in 1/3 of the amount we bill. We have to pay it to Medicaid so they can pay us money back. And so that's what that is we put in the 1/3 amount so that we can get funded back from Medicaid.
So that's sort of a refund.
Sounds like a
This is the
refund.
federal government. I don't think I can explain that to you. That was probably rude, but that's probably, every time I look at the Medicaid pay, pardon.
I could understand that.
So how'd you describe it?
I said, we pay them to pay us.
That's kind of the way it is. And I've always wondered why, and I've asked questions, but that's what they require us to do, so.
It is, that's strange.
So we get back 20,000 for the 10,000 we give them, is that correct?
We get back about 400 and some thousand each year
So
for the amount we give them.
probably offsets all up.
Yeah, so we have to keep paying enough that it covers our percentage for the reimbursement every month. So it'll change depending, some months we have big reimbursements, so the amount will change.
So I heard a question about musical instruments. That also is a grant that I oversee, and there were timpani. Do you know the big kettle drums? Those are very expensive, around 15 grand. And we received a grant to purchase those as well as a variety of other musical equipment this year. So that's that story. So when you go to the high school or middle school and see those drums in action, you can enjoy them. They are brand.
Thank you.
So Madam Chairman, just the grant she's talking about is called a TLC grant. It actually is a woman in Boise who has a little foundation and likes to support music at a few of the districts in this area, and we're one of them. We're fortunate enough to, we've been receiving it for 3 years and somewhere in the $27,000 to $50,000 range over 3 years.
Very generous.
Okay. Anything else, Bob?
No, that's all.
Do we have a motion to approve the bills?
I make a motion that we approve the bills as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Budget review. Cheryl.
Good evening. I enclosed in your packet the bill list as usual, or the budget as usual, and I made notes throughout it. Did anyone have any questions on anything? A lot of questions.
I do have a question.
Yes.
The working budget didn't change from last, at least in salaries and benefits, and I think other expenses too. The working budget didn't change
No, I had
from that month to this. Now,
I had prior to, in February, done the biggest part of the budget revision
okay.
and hadn't done anything in the month of March. And then I just made a couple more to balance the budget in April. So you will see those next month in the May board.
So you just kind of do those as needed throughout the year. Okay.
And we have a lot of lines that maybe have some overspent, by just a few $100s or so. And I'm probably not going to take the time to revise the budget for all of those small amounts, if that's okay with the board.
Well, it's fine with me. I just want to make sure I was understanding what we were doing. That's all.
You won't see changes every month.
Okay.
Probably from here out, I probably won't be making a lot of changes to the budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Cheryl? Mr. Rush, do you have anything?
Just on the revenue sheet that we put up every month. So this sheet just gives you an overview of the 100 budget. And you'll notice that we have the revenue and then actual revenue. And the number I look for every month here is to see where we are in our fund balance. So this month we're predicted. Yellow means we haven't gotten there yet. So we haven't put those expenses in. But we're at $865,738. That's 4.94%. And our fund balance then is that number plus this $500,000 that we have in the contingency fund. I leave the contingency fund out of this because I just think that $500,000 confuses you. It's set aside. We're not touching it. So these are all the accounts that we're actually spending from. So that's why I leave that separate from that perspective. So if you look at that, that's running just under 10% of total fund balance. Pretty good. A little less than last year. We'll see how it goes. Our biggest expenses are going to come in the next 3 months as we buy supplies for the next school year. So as those bills come through. And the Siemens bill, we get a couple of those bigger ones that affect us too. Okay, any questions?
Thanks.
Any questions? Okay. All right, thank you. Moving on, approval of budget hearing date and time.
Madam Chairman, there was one other attachment there on, it's like, it's entitled estimate enrollment. Did we want to touch on that one at all?
I would prefer if you wait. I've got a PowerPoint that has this slide in it.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, I think I confused people putting it in the wrong spot, so.
Yeah, I was confused.
But we will be talking about it.
Okay.
Let's talk about it when I get it in the PowerPoint.
Okay. Approval of budget hearing date and time. We have Cheryl.
So every year we have our budget hearing and it's in June, and we've got it set this year for June 12th. And we just need the board's approval to do that. And I can get the information to the county clerks to let them know the date of our budget hearing.
Is that a normal board hearing night? Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's just during the regular board meeting.
I make a motion that we approve that date and time.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Letter D, approval of auditor. You might as well
Yeah, I'll just stay. Every year Jared or Swigert and Company sends out a contract, or basically something that asking that we approve them doing our audit again for this coming year. And so that's what that is. They're just asking for our permission to put us on their schedule. They did not have an increase in fees this year. It's the same as last year.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
Swigert has been doing it for about 4 years now. Is the Bailey before that, is that the same company?
Yes.
Okay, so,
He was with Bailey and Company for several years, and then he left and went out on his own. We had Bailey and Company do it for 1 year after he left, and it was a tough. We weren't happy with the way they handled it.
yeah. So we've basically been having the same company do it for 10 years or more than that. Okay.
different auditors every time. He brings a different crew every time. It's not the same people coming. He does bring new people.
Yeah, I'm just a little concerned that we're having the same auditor or the same group year after year. That's my concern.
We went out for bid, how many years ago was that? It's been several years ago. And we got 2 out of state and 2 in-state. The 2 out of state were outrageous because of the travel time or the money it would cost for them to come into town. And I can't remember the amounts. I apologize. We had 2 from in-state. One was Bailey and Company or Swagger. And the other one was it was a new company, I believe, who had just started up over in the Payette area. And they were very high too. And so we went with Swagger because of the cost.
Mr. Jones?
The audit that they do, there's different levels of audits. Do we meet the minimum of the state or the maximum of the state requirements?
I would say they do the audit that they are required to do for government funds. And I'm sorry, I can't say what level that's at, but I just know that they meet all the requirements.
It seemed like it was a rather reasonable price for an audit for a facility this size, so.
Yes.
Madam Chair, just as a side note, an interesting point of reference is the same company our city uses as well. The city of Emmett uses.
Do they feel like they?
Direct values, white group as well.
Madam Chair, I had one question as whether or not we could request the report 2 weeks prior to the time it's presented to the board. Can we put that in there?
I do have a note to myself to make sure that we get that audit.
But can we make it part of when we send our letter back to him, make it formally?
I can put that in there. I can request that. They work.
That was one of the questions I had too, is that I actually had 3 weeks, 2 to review and then 1 if we needed to bring questions to Cheryl or questions to Mr. Zweigert, because October is when we need to approve it in order to get our funds in November. It's got to be into the state November 10th, as I recall, so that we get the payment November 15th. So
Yes, they will.
it would be very, very helpful if we could get that.
One other comment I had was with reference to our meeting when we had the work session, which I really appreciated, the high school coming in and talking about our accounts. But if we could have him address or review or advise us on, from an auditing standpoint, what we should be doing with our cash monies. Give us some ideas. And I don't know if he'll do that. I don't know if that's even in his ballpark.
So, Madam Chairman, the schools asked that question, and we work with him on things where we have those types of questions quite often from a management perspective. Say, how should we be handling this and what it is? So certainly he will provide that.
I'd just like to see him put it in the report or give us a letter back or something that we have something to hang our hat on.
And you want his
He
opinion
does.
on that, or?
I mean, he does do the audit. In the report, he will tell you if there's any findings. He doesn't go through everything and say everything is good. He just tells you what the findings are.
Right.
And there are no findings on our account.
Right, I realize that. I was just thinking of, what do we do? Does he have any ideas, or are we okay?
Okay.
Understand what I'm trying to say, Wade?
Yeah, I do. And we have to cover all that with him when we go through that process with him, when he meets with, I say we, but it's Brandy, the bookkeeper.
Right.
She goes through that entire process. She shows him the paperwork, much of the same paperwork that you guys saw as a board, and goes through how we do that process with them. And at times they have made recommendations, but the last few years, I think have been, they like the way that we're doing things.
Since we've had so much input from apparently sources in the community, it'd be a good thing for us to say, well, here's what our auditor says.
Well, and what I'm telling you, you can say to the community, The auditor finds no issues with our finances, both at the schools or at, I mean, he is not, that's what the audit report actually says. There are no findings. And that's what an auditor will tell you. Now, he will give us advice. We go and ask advice for all kinds of things. And sometimes they're weird things. We come up with something we don't know about or do, or, so we'll ask the auditor for that type of advice. We certainly can ask him to put a letter together or something like that within reason. There's a point where he acts as an auditor. I will tell you, you're not approving the audit. You are accepting the audit when you accept the audit. You don't get to edit or change or do anything with the audit. That would be extremely inappropriate because the auditor has to act independent of the district and the board and anything. I mean, that's what an auditor has to do by law. So we want them to be independent. I think it'd be good. We can have him write. Asking advice is not a problem. We do that all the time. So having him say, yeah, it works.
You're approving his findings.
You're approving his findings. Yeah, you're not editing his findings or changing. I mean, you're just saying.
Question.
Yes.
Are we saying that he's going to meet with the board,
Yeah,
the auditor?
He meets with the board every year and presents the audit.
He comes usually October and presents the audit to the board. And this last year, it came just like the week of the board meeting. So you guys didn't have a lot of time to go over it. But we're going to try and have that to you prior. So you have plenty of time to go through and read up on it.
I have to have 63 pages big.
Yes. So did you get a copy of that audit?
Yes.
Last year's audit to look
I
at?
went online and
Okay,
picked it up.
perfect.
I reviewed it with 17's audit.
Any other questions for Cheryl?
Thank you.
You need a motion on that?
Yeah.
Make a motion to approve the auditor, Mr. Zweigert.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve Swigert, John and Associates to do the audit
Is there a
on
second?
2019.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Mr. Jenkins?
I'm just wondering, since it's a contract, if it's a roll call vote? No.
Contracts can be signed just by the superintendent. You actually don't have to take votes on all contracts. Lots of them we like to bring to you. Doesn't require a roll call.
We need to take the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. School accounts.
So, Madam Chairman, I think we're planning to do this quarterly, and I think Cheryl wanted to get it to a quarterly date. Is that correct?
Yes.
On this? And April happens to be part of the quarter.
We're kind of a month off, so I'll try and catch up so we have it March and June and so forth instead of off. You may get it
Bless you.
sooner than later.
Madam Chair, I was just curious for the equality of the different grade schools, Shadowview and Carberry. What would explain like the discrepancy is why one school has such a high fund versus the other one is so much drastically lower.
I would say it's probably for fundraising that they do.
The historic buildup of the account.
Yes.
So is Carberry higher?
Yeah, quite a bit higher.
Carberry's difference in that fund is mainly related to the rental of the building. So they have a church that meets there every week, and that rental of the building is one of the reasons why. I wouldn't say it's more fantastic fundraising. I think the rental of that building, and they've allowed that part of that account to build up for some expenses to, and there may be some grant money in there for the track to go into.
Walking path, couple of different ways that the funds have come in from the mayor and the Joe Broke for Art and I believe another one or two. So they raised money before I got there, so that's nice to have a little bit of money to deal with that.
Yeah.
Cheryl, is there any, listing of assets, the school accounts?
They can run those off. I think both Shadow Beach and Salaries programs will allow that, and I believe the high school and middle school can do that on their accounting programs. Now, I don't think Sweet Ola or the Black Canyon have the capability to do that.
Yeah, they probably don't have many assets in those, so that.
Are there any assets? I don't think there are any assets. There's cash is what there is.
Well, I was wondering about equipment or things of that sort. You got, I don't know that, Madam Chairman, if the boosters buy football helmets, I guess, is that asset just is automatically part of the high school, the districts then? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Just the people.
Music equipment, I guess, would be. It's like the sound system, I think that becomes the school.
Okay.
District.
It does become the district.
Any questions on the school accounts? So if it's quarterly, then we won't see this again until June. Is that what you're saying, Cheryl?
I guess I could ask how, if you guys, that's how you want it, if I just go ahead and hold off now.
That's how I
until June,
want it.
And
Okay,
then I'll start every 3 months.
okay.
Come on, Shadow Gate, you have like a quarter.
Hey, I go on a philosophy, I'm not a banker. I get the money, we're gonna spend it on.
Or new piping.
Get our little walking pad, the money will be deployed.
Alrighty. No more questions on school accounts. Moving on to action items.
We have to approve that one too.
That wasn't an action item.
No action on the school
Okay.
accounts. Action items, approval of termination of employee A and B. Have a motion?
Madam Chairman, I move that we approve the termination of employees A and B.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Or-
Aye. Don't roll call or?
Oh, let's do a roll call, excuse me, because of the disclosure of the relative. So a roll call vote. Mr. Teeter,
Aye.
Mr. Weeks,
Aye.
I abstain.
Mr. Jones.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving on. B, new hires, transfers, resignations, retirements, change job status. Elise, any questions on this item here?
Madam Chairman,
Mhm.
the only question I had on, I think it's Kara Hine. It said resign, but there's no date on that one. Is that just an oversight?
Probably.
I think it probably is an oversight.
Okay, it was,
Actually, I'm not sure the date has been established.
it's still working then?
Yeah,
Oh,
she's
okay.
resigned, but was trying to figure out, she was doing some calculations, personal calculations on how long she could work here for that. She's, that's the middle school. She's, yeah. That's another job and is figuring out when to move.
Okay, so I guess it doesn't matter to us at this point? Okay.
It matters to the Cindy Spalding when she does the final check.
I move that we accept the, I guess we need that, right?
Yeah, that's an action item.
Yeah, I move that we accept the recommendation or the transfers and resignations and retirees listed.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on, approval or denial of modular building for OLA.
So, Madam Chairman, what I'm going to ask the board to do is that we move forward with placing a modular building up at OLA. I'm not going to ask the board for the exact option of how we go that. Mike and I have been working on some different options for that. So I can get into that in just a minute. There are two proposals in your packet, so you can kind of see what we're talking about. But we're working on some others so that we want to make sure we do the very best deal. Before I do that, I thought I'd give you some pictures because I realize I don't know how much of this board saw these pictures before. And I know some of you probably haven't because you haven't been on long enough for that. So I apologize for those that have and those that haven't. So this is our building in OLA. We started working with an architectural firm and this last spring we went out and said, well, let's pull off that skirting and see what's underneath it. And what we discovered underneath that is a tremendous amount of dry rot inside the building.
Sorry to interrupt. I was wondering if Ken, you might be able to adjust the camera onto the.
We can, but it won't focus because of the light reflecting back, so it just goes in and out of focus. I mean, I've done it in the past, but.
And we'll post this in the packet so people can go to the packet and look at these pictures. I actually just did this just before the meeting. I thought, I bet these folks haven't seen the pictures, so I just thought that would be helpful. I hope that's, unless the board doesn't want to, and that's fine too.
These pictures will be loaded in the packet?
We'll load it in the packet, so it'll be online for people to go look for it when they go back and look at this board. So I'm just taking a little bit more close up of that same picture, and you can see what you're not seeing here is the rim board that's supposed to be around the outside edge of that building. What you also are not seeing is you're seeing two boards here, which is and you'll notice there's only two of them. There are any others. And quite frankly, what we found is those boards have been rotted back quite a ways into the building. This is actually moving around to the other edge of the building, but you can see that in past years, some people have gone in there and stacked some boards up and where it had rotted out before and kind of that process. Then we asked a contractor to go up there and do some work for us. So he went up and rebuilt this. This is the east end and both the north and the south corners of the east end of the building. I think this picture is the east north end of the building, if I remember right. And these are two pictures looking down the sides of what he did. What you'll notice here is this 2x4, not 2x4, between the 2x4s below that, you'll see a piece of plywood that's sitting on top of that 2x4. That piece of plywood was one that he slid in there to create a subfloor for the flooring to hold up that end of it. And you can see there's still an awful lot of rot left within it. He did a very nice job. But one of the things we found in this building is that our 2x4s going up the building are rotting up the side of the building. And some of those are up to 3 or more feet up the building as dry rot. And I've been able to take an awl, my grandfather's awl, and push it through the siding and through the 2x4, just very simply, without much resistance. He did a nice job. It looks great, but we don't believe it's structurally sound. And the architect and the engineer that's looked at this building feels like there's a tremendous amount of work for it. George, who was the contractor, was very concerned about the building. He said, I've given you a year, maybe I've given you 2, but you've got to do major work on this building as we go through it. George thinks that just for the foundation part and the flooring part that we would have to go inside the building and take out sections of the floor, redo foundation, redo all the floor joists, fix that section, and then do another section to do the building. And that doesn't touch the walls, which have to be done. And we also need to do some work in the rafters and the building. Their estimates on this building run somewhere around $500,000 to $600,000 to repair the building. It's 2,100 square feet. So that's an awful lot of expense for a building. Even if we decided to do it, George said that this would be at least a year, probably more, if we decided to move forward on it. So what I'm proposing to the board that I put in the packet is that we move forward with putting a modular building there. Excuse me, I was going to try to get to the picture. That we approve putting a two-room modular building. It would be a wet building, meaning bathrooms in building.
It's good.
And the only thing that in this drawing that I would like to do to the building is put a door inside between the two rooms so they could transfer back and forth. I think it'd be a much easier process from a teaching perspective inside the building. But other than that, what we would have to do is put a sidewalk in front of it. We have to connect it to power and we have to connect it to sewer. We would close the Ola building, lock it off. We wouldn't allow anybody in it once we put the new one up there and go for that. The two proposals I have in there that I put in the packet, and I think they're all together, aren't they? From two different companies. I actually asked a third company and they said they don't work in this area, so I've got two of them to do it. You'll notice the first part up here is that right up there at the top is what they estimate the cost of the building is if you purchase it new. And this is a lease option. There's 36 months lease option. In these lease options, what they do is the ramp, the rate that they're going to give you. And so the total rental for the term, that's 3-year term, is $61,000. And then they actually put in delivery into the bid and actually tear down and take it away after 3 years. So you know the total cost, I guess, at 3 years on that. We have contacted them about lease purchase options. These companies generally are not very interested in a lease purchase option. They either want you to purchase or to lease the building. The other thing that goes on this time of year that I would like to do more exploring on is that we will get schools that are not going to use a modular next year, or we have some charter schools that decided not to continue. They're just, every now and then I'll get a letter from somebody saying, we have some modulars that are available. And I think it would be, we just want to spend a little time finding the best deal for the district on this, either a lease deal. This one was a better price lease deal than the 1-year lease deal. I like this 3-year. There'd be no reason to put one up there for just a year. We're going to have to take some time to decide, but we're also going to have to, we need some time. 3 years would be very appropriate if we were going to lease it from that perspective.
Madam Chairman, if I might ask a couple questions. That $79,000 would be for 3 years.
Yes.
Be $135,000 to purchase.
Yes.
Okay. Question.
Pardon?
Those are my questions.
Well, and your question might be, so what's the best deal? I've had that wondering myself, to be honest with you. And if we're going to purchase at $135,000, we'd need to go to bid. So we may be able to get a little lower price than that $135,000. I think if I was to say this, and not necessarily from this company, but I think you would be in the 110 range, actually, would be about where you'd be purchasing if you went out to bid.
I remember my next question. When do we need to make a decision on this?
I believe you need to make a decision tonight about us moving forward, and then we need to start doing this. Because if you talk about the things we would need to do, Mike and I've stared at where we think it ought to be there from a Google map up above and trying to figure some things out. And he was going to go up and do some measurement. However, I don't believe he got that done this week. He was homesick, so I think we're a little behind on that. We need to then, we've got to work with the county and city permits, all those types of things, figure out how much sidewalk we want to use, what's going to take for power, all of those. And honestly, if we made a decision tonight to move forward, there's just a lot of research we probably need to do for about the next month and a half. And then we could start moving forward on it. And I'll just tell you, summers go so fast.
Yeah. Well, I guess back to my question a little bit. There needs to be a decision on which company and which all that sort of stuff. Now, you're not really planning on making that decision tonight, are you?
What I would, if the board would like to, and I'd bring it back to you, but I'd like the board just to authorize the superintendent and Mike and the crew to go find the best deal for the district. Knowing what the worst deals are, it's got to be better than these, either a lease of 3 years or a purchase. If the board wants to say, we don't want you to look at the lease, we want you to look at purchase, I debate that issue back and forth. So I'm going to have a hard time arguing with you on it. I just, one of those things. If you want to make the final decision after we have it done, that's fine too. However you would like to move forward.
Madam Chair, Wayne, one thing I questioned, because I know this was one item that's, in the levy. What if the levy doesn't pass? I mean, that concerns me that we might move forward tonight and not have the funds to pay for this project.
If the levy doesn't pass, we still have to spend $611,000 on student occupied buildings. And I believe there are 2 projects that we're going to have to do regardless. We're going to spend $611,000, so there's more than that. But this project and the roof at Sweet are just going to have to be done. So we redo the budget so that we can do these as we go through it. I guess, I mean, it puts us in a tough position, and I never want to play games. You could say, well, if it doesn't pass, we'll not have the oldest school, but I don't want to say that. I think this is a project we're going to have to do. So that's, and you can disagree with me on it, but that's
another question. Have you heard anything from the OLA constituency as far as this?
I have not, and I probably need to get up there and spend some time with them and talk with them. I think that's part of the process we need to move forward as we go forward.
One more question about, I'm looking at that, it looks like it's just 2 rooms with bathrooms. Is there kitchen facilities? There
are not kitchen facilities in it. It's 2 rooms.
What are we going to
bathrooms.
Do with the lunches up there?
I think we would do what we do now. We have, we might drop a sink in there outside of the bathroom, which is one thing I was thinking about. But beyond that, we'll put in a cabinet like we do right now, and a microwave, I think, is about what they have up there. They do some plates, but there is no kitchen facility.
I was just trying to think of what they have there, like coat racks and things like that we'd have to furnish it somehow.
Yeah, we would have to furnish it. Much of the furnishings that are in it, we can move over there, except for that big cabinet on the one side. That doesn't move. They know what I'm talking about. It's been a joke for a while, actually. I'm not sure we could lift it even if we wanted to move it. But most of it would. But yes, we'd have to put in some coat racks and those types of things in the building.
I think if we move forward, we need to probably get that community, at least the teacher and the PTO organization and people involved with it. So we get something that they can accept and move forward. They should be happy with having a new building, I would think.
Versus not having one at all.
Yes.
Yeah, and square footage, it isn't much smaller, actually. As a matter of fact, access to the bathrooms would be fabulous. I mean, so much better, and some other issues like that. There's some advantages to it.
I didn't see you out there, so you are here.
I have a question. So this would be in the works for the beginning of the school year?
I've debated this issue personally, okay, just so you kind of feel what I think about. I've talked to the architect, I've looked at it, we've crawled under the building, I've crawled under the building. I think the decision for me was when George came and presented and was talking with me, and it's not on those pictures, but I didn't realize until he came to my office and walked through this with me that the floor joists also are compromised. For example, the floor joists on the north end, there was only about 2 inches of that joist that was not completely rotted away and still sitting on any structure whatsoever. All the rest of it was gone. And the more I've thought about that, I just personally do not believe we can put kids in a building that's just compromised. I just think there's a point when you have to pull the plug and say, it's not a safe building for our kids. And personally, that's where I am with it. And I've debated it back and forth. I've talked with people. I've argued. I think when George, the contractor, and I sat down, and honestly, his opinion was, you got a mess here. And he got the opportunity to work on it. So, more than I do.
Madam Chair, got a question or two. Really, we're looking for a long-term solution. So leasing would be the less favorable at this time.
If it's a long-term solution, yes.
And the second thing is, sooner or later, that building's going to have to come down. Just locking it up, if it's deteriorated that as much, it may be a hazard down the road.
It may be, or it may be that the community would like to invest in it and repair it. I honestly don't think the school district should. Now, this is personal opinion. People argue with me, and that's fine. I don't mind that. But and I'm going to make this personal because I don't want to say anything for the board at this point. Personally, I believe school districts need to focus on buildings for schools and making sure they're safe and quality and those types of things. And our business is not preserving old buildings. I'm not opposed to preserving old buildings. I love old buildings. I love parts of that old building. There's things, from an old Idaho guy, there's some fun stuff up there, but from a school district perspective and finances, I just don't see that as a wise use of school funds. The community may want to and may want to go for some grants and some other things. I think that's, a few years to give them an opportunity to do that would be okay. But I do believe we need to be careful and watch it for safety reasons.
Yes.
And it's one of the reasons Mike and I have even looked at, we were talking about where to place the new building. Honestly, I want to place it a little ways away from the current building, not too far. And we want to go out and talk with some people about where they want it, but we're thinking right along the parking lot, just towards the road down there, because it's flat. I like flat, and it's a little ways away from the building.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Rush. So when you say lock up, what do you entail that as being? Are you going to fence around it, or are you just going to lock the doors and walk away from it? Or
Change the locks on the doors and leave it that way. Probably not fence it. The building behind it is the library. It was built at a different time, has different foundations and stuff on it. I presume the community would continue to use the library, and I presume that they would want to be able to use the bathrooms in the new building for library use. That's my assumption going on into this, so, which is what they're doing now. It'd be a little further walk to the bathroom, but still have a bathroom. And we would probably put a valve off the old building bathrooms, so and put a valve for the new building. Just rather than put all new pipe in, I can throw a valve in and do that.
There be any issue with that being a historical building, Christine, as far as what we can and cannot do with it?
There's not. I learned so much this summer and working with Heritage Foundation and their architect. What I discovered and what they told me in this is that there is no federal requirements or requirements that would make us do anything. We have, as the owner, we have the right to tear it down, remodel it in any way we want, do whatever we would want to it. There is no requirement. Generally, where their requirements come in is if a city or a community has added additional requirements to their community. But Gem County hasn't done that. So, and I'm not saying I want to tear down an old building just to do it. But there are no requirements from the the fact that it's on the historical registry.
Madam Chairman and Mr. Rush, at this junction, I feel that, we can move forward with this, but I question which way we want to go, kind of like you do, whether we want to go with a purchase of a building or the lease seems least desirable to me. And I'm worried about the funding. How can we move forward without committing to the, what's the next step that we can take? And
Well, I guess, I think the board can decide what you want to do. I think the minimum I need from the board tonight is, Mr. Rush, we know we got to replace the building. Go figure out how to get that done for the best deal. And if you say, and please come back and we'll do the final vote on it, that's fine. I'm very happy with that. That doesn't bother me at all. I don't want to slow down, and that won't slow me down coming back for a final vote. I'll move fast. Honestly, what I want to look at next is can I find really good quality used ones. Now, some people might suggest the buildings that are next to this one. The answer is just no. I doubt I could move it up the road and actually have them hold together. Those aren't worth anything. So we're talking about ones that are fairly new that somebody leased for a year or 2 years or something like that that is now available that we could do. And I want to go see if I can find some of those deals. And I just got to do some digging, call some superintendents and just see what's out there on the market.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that our superintendent, Mr. Rush, research the OLA issue in the way of either replacing with a lease or purchase, and bring it back to the board the next meeting so we can look at the figures and make a final decision.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any more discussion?
I would like all options observed, whether it's leased, whether it's used, whether it's bought. I would like, when you come back, Mr. Rush, I would like all those options.
Okay.
I also like to make sure that we have a community meeting with OLA. Thank you.
I think that the next board meeting, 2 of the trustees will not be here. But I don't know if that.
Yeah, that's right.
You and who
Terry.
else? Terry?
Yep.
We still have a
We
quorum.
still have a quorum.
I realize that.
Okay, we need to take
You
a
can
vote.
always call in.
Yeah, we can always call in.
Yeah, you can do that.
Proxy?
No.
You can call
Conference
in.
call.
Okay.
We need to take the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Moving on, Curriculum Committee, Dr. Roberts.
Hello, I was asked to come with some information in regards to our upcoming math curricular adoption. So I think for the purpose of this conversation, I think Mrs. Harris was the only person that was on the board at the last time when we finished our adoption. We've been doing, our most recent adoption was secondary math, which was for grades 6 through 12. And so I kind of just want to give a quick overview of the process that we have followed and plan to follow in this instance as well. And that includes research on the front end that I do with the support of others, as well as reaching out to members in our communities and areas here in Idaho to review what materials are being used. I also reach out to representatives from the State Department of Education, other states. We also look at, I have a small group that comes together and we look at data of other surrounding districts. This data is specific then to grades K through 5 in math, to see if there are other schools that are like us that are outperforming us, and then I research into what materials they may be providing. And then we move forward and we establish a process. I've pulled in samples based on that information and information from the State Department of Education. And then we pull together a group and narrow choices and this is just a really high level overview because there's a lot of steps in there. And then we move forward in alignment with policy to put together a curriculum adoption committee. And as I said, this follows the process that we've used over the last about 7 years, making different adoptions, as well as most recently the K-5 adoption that we did for English language arts materials a few years ago. According to policy 662, the policy requires that the curriculum materials adoption committee be formatted and that we have a certain number of committee members that are required to not be public educators or school trustees. So for example, when we did the ELA adoption, we had a total of 3 and occasionally 4 parents that attended our committee meetings. It usually takes about between 4 and 5 meetings, as well as some work outside of that for this process for us to be prepared to bring a request or rather a recommendation to the board. So we reach out, we have a variety of people that sit on that committee. It includes principals, instructional coaches, classroom teachers, special education teacher, title teacher, which is for our federal programs, parents, as I said, and then myself as the director of curriculum. What this group does is they are the decision-making body that sits in on these day-long meetings and is the most involved in the process. However, each of these meetings is open to any member of the community. They're an open group. Anyone's welcome to come in. We also do debrief sessions, knowing that we can't provide substitutes for everyone to come that might want to be involved. So after these meetings, I always offer an opportunity. I will stay and anyone else in the committee that would like to, and we offer anyone that wants to come in after their school day is over and gain information. What you learned so far, where are we at? And we try and update everyone. We also open the meeting or open the materials up to a community meeting, or we have kind of an open house where the 2 finalists are presented to the committee or to the community rather. We have some rubrics that we ask them to use when they're looking at it, and then they have the opportunity to provide input as well, which we bring to the board with that information. And then through all of that process, all of the data points are put together and a recommendation is made to the board that the committee supports, and we come to the board and ask for approval of that recommendation to move forward with the purchase. I expect that this purchase will be probably somewhat in line with the purchase that we've made in the past, which will run about $200,000. That's pretty typical. That's what we put in our levy request, and very similar to what we purchased for those of you that may have been watching or involved in the 612 curricular materials adoption event most recently. They actually used some other funds that we received through Boise State University because we do dual credit offerings to them, and ended up spending just over $225,000. So that's an upper level kind of overview. We always debrief after each of these events and say what went well and what do we need to improve on. And the process that we've used has been consistent across the district and across content areas, primarily because we have the opportunity to build rubrics based on our own experience as well as the experience of other districts. There are national organizations that put together rubrics as well, and going out and gathering as much information as we can prior to a vendor presentation. So that's the overview of the process. I'm happy to give as many more details. I brought my whole folder as you would like to hear.
My first question is this software we're looking at or books, paper?
Great question. And what we've done in the last 4 adoptions that I've been responsible for in some way, we have had a combination. And so we have 2 amazing elementary teachers in our audience right now, and one who has been worked up at Sweet as an elementary staff member as well. And the adoptions that we did for the English language arts are a combination of text and online. That's what we've done over time because we have found that it works the best. And we've done that not only in that English language arts at elementary, but we also did it in English language arts for secondary, math for secondary. We have a purchase that includes both components. We purchase once and it pays for 6 years.
So we don't have
Any other questions?
any renewal licenses for 6 years?
The bids that we have right now have been a 6-year license bid. The state of Idaho recommends that, or their process for recommending adoption is every 6 years, but for a long time, as you are aware, funds were tight, and that probably is something we are well outside of that 6-year cycle. I had the privilege today of meeting with several of Mr. Weiner's staff and from the social studies department, and some of their materials, specifically at 6th grade, are from 1995. And yes, I was way back in those days. I was involved in the curricular adoption process for that series as well. So we are catching up.
Madam Chair, Dr. Roberts, on our agenda, it says curriculum committee as an action item. Our understanding is, well, going back to last month's meeting, we reviewed the Idaho School Board Association's recommendations based on our last town hall meeting. And one of those items was recommending a school board trustee to sit on the curriculum committee. If nothing else, being part of the correspondence and being invited, which I know you said the public's invited. I'd have to be told where that's posted to the community. But aside from that, and then we understood in the past there have been trustees that, and one who had resigned recently, who's no longer obviously privy or has that opportunity. So is that something you're aware of or have knowledge? And
in my tenure in my position right now, and this is my 8th year in this position, in my tenure in other districts as a curriculum director, as well as the research I've done, it's not typical that a board member becomes a part of the materials adoption process, primarily because we will spend a lot of time looking at the standards for math. And unless it were an area of, and I don't know your areas of expertise, but unless perhaps math or the Idaho standards or the 8 mathematical practices, things like that, unless they are a common part of everyday life. And I've even worked with boards where people were teachers, current teachers, or even a current principal. It's just, you're welcome, and I serve at your direction. So if that's what you would like, obviously that's within your purview to do. It's just, my comments are about, we will be having a deep dive conversation that is specific. And within this policy, the way it's set up is that because 1/4 of our committee members are expected to be parents, and we've had great parents participate in each of our committees, that it just, and this says 1/4 of the committee members will be persons who are not public educators or school trustees. So we then just have to adjust the number size and making sure that I have enough parents that are able to come.
And what kind of time involvement, or what's the frequency to how many meetings?
The frequency, and I actually looked at frequency that was involved for the English language arts adoption were 5 full day meetings, as well as extended days on 5 other occasions, a full day of a opportunity where we have the open house, as I was saying, for the community members, and then decision-making time as needed. Part of that is we will do 2 days of standards review, primarily to make sure that we know what we're looking for as far as standards. We also look at 2 documents that are part of a rubric. One is national, one is one that I've worked with other people in my position throughout this area that we've actually built a rubric that's been in use by other districts. And so that will be a couple of front runner days that help us begin to look at the research related to how young students learn now. We'll also review some research from an area expert named that works out of Boise State University and is part of a mathematical thinking for instruction project that's required under certification or recertification. Let me rephrase. It's required under certification for all elementary staff. So it's a deep dive into the story of elementary math. How's that? Is that fair? Sort of?
Out of all those days, which day would be, or days would be the most beneficial for a trustee to attend?
My recommendation is, and we set up our room so that, or what we've done is we set up the room so that there's a bank of tables in the middle, similar to when you walk into the room next door, that's where the meetings are held. And then we add chairs around the perimeter. And those chairs are open for people to come and go. So we try and treat it as much as we can without it being disruptive, as you might an open house if you were a realtor, where people are welcome to come and go. And my recommendation that we've carried forth to boards both here and in another district where I worked, come learn as much as you're available, come during your lunch hour, come when you're in town, whatever works for you. Because the more you know is great, but whether or not you want, if you take a seat on that committee, I need to make sure that my parent balance is right. And so what we have suggested is if you come and go, please come and go. And I'm always happy to meet with whomever at any time to answer any questions. If you come in and, we're doing a deep dive into symbolic and iconic math instruction and the pedagogy behind constructivist theory, I'm happy to, I just want to be clear that that's the type of information that we will talk about, and I'm happy to share with whomever, community members or otherwise, wants to know.
So, Madam Chairman, however, I might suggest that coming and seeing the presentation by the vendors, when the final two vendors present, is pretty instructive.
Yep, and what we practice a couple of things. You've got to wear your poker face because they're salesmen. And the one thing I don't take, which sometimes makes art, I don't accept swag. Do you know what swag is? We set swag aside. Now, if they want to bring it and give it to me and I set it back and we gave it away as a raffle during a PD, I'm cool with that. But we just don't bring even swag into the meeting. It's show us what you got. We'll see if it aligns. We'll look at your research. We'll look at area districts that are using it. We'll look at national and state rubrics to see how it's going. And then we make an informed decision based on those kind of things. So don't expect to walk out with swag, just saying. You might bring.
Less about bribery. It would be my preference that we at least designate one trustee, because if it's just kind of floated out there, then it gets watered down and nobody's taking accountability or responsibility. So as far as a point person who's in point contact with you, and whether they sit on that board or they're in attendance to observe, because there's a policy, and you have to make some adjustments, but that we have someone that can disseminate that information back. That would be my preference.
And as I said, we although meeting are calendared, they are not on a board calendar because it's not, you know what I mean? I don't post them in that way. They're we let staff know and that information, and they're open in that way. But they won't appear on a board posting.
You're open, no, because it's not a board committee. It's a district committee, but we do post the open house in the paper and Facebook and on our website. And so we do some of those meetings when it's open to the public, we do post those, just not the same as a board because it's a district committee.
Correct.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm saying, what I'd like it to look like is we as trustees get chosen or nominated, I should say, to attend like the attendance committee meetings. So obviously administrators of the individual schools reach out to us or designees and say, this is when we're meeting. And so a point person on this board who is in that sort of contact with you, invited from start to finish, and they attend when it's most useful time or use of their time.
Madam Chair, just a thing to keep in mind, if you become a member on that committee, you cannot vote here if you vote there. You can only make one decision. So if you make the decision in the committee, you can't take part in the conversation when the committee brings it to the board.
Well, how about we did this, we pick a trustee and then that can be worked out between the trustee and Mrs. Roberts as far as if they serve best on the committee by amending the policy or they just are observant.
Madam Chairman, I might suggest that we have a trustee that's responsible for this and then get a list of the meetings and decide when it's most appropriate to be at that. Not necessarily join the committee as a board member, but join the committee as a.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, that way it would work. And I agree with you in that if you don't designate somebody, it'll.
Nobody
fall
else.
through the cracks.
So what I'm going to then do is you all are gonna let me know who to communicate with, or do I
We're gonna
communicate with the chair?
We'll nominate someone
Okay.
here.
All right, it will be fun. Trust me. Right, ladies?
Yes, Terry Jones, you have a question?
I'm sorry.
Dr. Roberts,
Math curriculum.
you're asking this board to spend a lot of money.
Yes, sir.
How are you going to justify that in the way of performance?
That's a great question. One of the things that we look at over time, and one of the challenges that we've had as I've reviewed other districts' data, is to find schools that look like us that are outperforming us in math at the elementary level. One of the challenges we have is that over time, materials become out of date and become extremely expensive to purchase, as well as they're just out of date with the current standards and expectations. So we look at a couple of things. We look at student performance. We also look at how much I spend right now in just buying the materials for our old series that we have, because after 6 years, I have to, in essence, buy off the rack prices, if you will, and that becomes very expensive. So we look at student performance. We also look at what I would call return on investment. How much is it costing us versus right now we are buying materials for a very old series at several probably pushing $30,000 a year, just for their current masters. Does that help?
Very much so.
Thank you, sir.
I want more.
If you want more data, I can be known to be
Data heavy.
Is that
thank you. I'm gonna go sit
Self-
down.
Is that self-nomination?
No, it's not a self-nomination, but I definitely will talk with her.
We have this down as an action item, is that correct, Mr. Rush?
Yes, you do.
Do we want to decide who wants to be on that committee or participate and observe? Or do we have to do it now? Because we can't talk outside here.
Is anyone else interested in doing that?
I'm doing enough right at the moment.
Okay. So I'll be that volunteer.
I
The board.
nominate Jefferson.
I second it.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, in the meantime, we do have action items that's to approve the curriculum.
No, the action item was to fund for a nominee. It wasn't to approve.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. The
We're
verbiage
not
here.
ready to approve any curriculum.
Okay. All right, now, moving on. Letter E, action item 218.1, the policy that we move from the consent agenda to an action item.
Are we? Well, I need visual reference and then I'll speak to it.
Bring it up here.
School board use of email and social media.
Was that one way back here?
Yeah, it's
Almost like one of the first things you come to.
and then I would like a potty break if that's permissible.
Recess, we call it recess.
I move to recess.
Where's my hand?
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Aye.
You wanna do it now? I could.
I got it. Thank you. Sorry, I should have, I forgot about it.
Oh, you young people.
Well, I'm gonna use it anyway, but I'll let you guys have it first.
Great, take it for you. I don't know why. It's weird. And I thought, well, maybe if I just wiggle this, but then it's still. No, it's Jefferson can't get his. Okay.
Darn kid gave me your glasses.
I'm pretty sure I want one like that, just like that.
Right here, start with.
So is it up for two? No, I want one, but I want to. We're being bribed. We can't be bribed.
Yeah, we don't work for money, but we will work for food.
Well, I told her home bake would be better.
It's pretty good.
Oops, I'm in the wrong chair.
One thing I people are around me a lot notice I'm in better mood.
We are like one on the field and they have a sticker. Put it into somebody else.
From Ola.
Oh, yeah.
We need to thank Ola
Come back live.
Very nice. Dinner.
Great. Otherwise, we could do the same. Let's try. So, wait, you're saying you get on the board with here?
I can go around the back door.
Heather?
From Ola? And we need to have more votes around here. Go ahead, have one.
Yeah, I'm not having.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't have it. I didn't.
I know.
Okay, I will email it. It got emailed to your district email for board book, so I'll just reset it and it should go back to you.
Okay.
Because that's where it goes. And so when I set it up, it would have went straight to your district email. So maybe it got lost. So I'll
I
reset
just
it.
found my district email tonight.
Oh, okay.
But it was
So it might be buried in there.
So district email only comes on this computer.
Well, you can do it at home, but you have to go to Gmail and set it up. What is your personal address? Is your personal a Gmail?
So
You
just
go up
that's
to
with
the corner.
another.
Yeah, that corner where the icon, either you have a picture or a letter or something, if you click on that and add account. And then you can add the district, it's a Gmail account, so you can add it in there.
Yeah, I've done that before. Yeah, I got 4 or 5 now.
Hold on.
Well, that was nice of them.
Yes.
I don't need it. I had lunch already.
Your
But they're
fizz,
very good.
fit, or whatever it's called, fizzy fizz.
This is showing buying votes.
It is.
It's just keeping us alive. It just keeps looking around, that's all.
So are you guys, is it for all you guys?
I've had mine.
You had your, did you guys already eat yours already?
You want one, Jerry?
Okay,
When the meeting's over.
Meeting's over.
I'm gonna eat mine now because I'm hungry.
Already had one.
I had just a couple eggs for dinner.
Yeah, we had a Girl Scout leader meeting at this place. And we thought, you can't have that.
Yeah. Everybody gained 10 pounds.
And then we would buy to go home the next day, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I went and visited them when they first opened. They had an open house and they were giving them right out of the,
Yeah.
you know, and we just quit, you know.
That's cool.
Come on, Jefferson. It's time. I guess we still got work to do.
Do you think anybody knows if I start those waters?
Go right ahead. Ken, did you get one?
Last night, down there at someone's, well, up to the, almost up to the shed.
Oh, I'm having my one that I don't need.
Up in that.
Years ago in 97.
I went home and said, I should get on the elliptical, but then I was like, I've got kids, I need to go visit my kids, and then my kids wanted nothing to do with me. They're like, I should have gone on the elliptical.
In the water.
One only read for 4 minutes and was done. I'm like, okay, Dad can have her, and then the other one wanted to watch.
I might do off on my username
And get the bridge and boards. Oh, yes. It was crazy.
All right, that's where I'm going wrong.
Okay.
I was adding a number on the end of it.
That's only for the kiddies.
All right.
Graduation year. You can put yours in if you want.
All right.
Oh, that's the wrong one. Okay, I got the wrong one here.
We could put Terry Jones's graduation year in there too, but it's hard to do the Roman numerals.
Yeah.
Boy,
Oh, wow.
talk about respect around here.
It's the first one.
You want one of these? Ola brought them. They were delicious.
Mhm.
When did you graduate from high school?
60.
Thank you.
60 cents you pass it down.
They've all eaten them apparently. Terry said he was gonna
Jefferson,
wait.
do you want your?
Jefferson, do you want your donut now?
No, thank you.
I'll put them down here on the end for when we're done.
All right.
Garden for you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hey, you've been doing a lot of gardening.
Who's next?
It's been a while.
He's getting closer.
Everybody get a donut?
Did you get one?
Not every man for himself. Or women, as the case may be.
Okay, we're all back from break. We are on letter, action item E. Policy 218.1, school board use of email and social media.
Okay, Madam Chair, the reason I asked to have this pulled out, going back to last month's meeting, and Mr. Alexander was so gracious to allow us to use his facility. I was busy trying to log on my computer once again and kind of passed over this policy, but I did hear fellow trustees have some questions. The one, basically number one, what my recommendation would be to scratch number one. Okay. Anyway, for the simple fact that, as you can see there, it says the board will not use email communications via social media or other electronic communications as a substitute for deliberations or voting. I just haven't had time.
I'm sorry, we've struggled all night trying to get this thing. We're hoping to help us to get with the tech department. It's not even coming up now.
Oh, hey.
Okay.
Okay, I said it too early. I just didn't look at it.
No, you're right.
Keep looking
Yeah,
at it.
or voting at board meetings or for other communications or business properly confined to board meetings. So I guess my point there is naturally deliberation is an open session. The only thing that constitutes that not being permissible is if more than two board members were having a conversation discussing business via any of those mediums, which would constitute a quorum. So if two board members are talking on the phone, emails equally, communications, obviously all these things are privy to public records requests, but nothing other than establishing a quorum would basically deflate our opportunity to correspond via email one-on-one, if you get my drift, what I'm trying to explain. So my recommendation would be to, obviously it's open to further discussion, but would be to strike number one and the rest of them, start number two with number one and so on and so forth, but the rest of them would be appropriate. Unless we want to put in number one, more than two board members should not do this outside of open deliberations.
So, Madam Chairman, I would recommend that we, if you'd like to do that, we run this by legal counsel. I will tell you one of the famous court cases that the lawyers will show you about this is one where two board members were discussing an employee on email. And when they terminated that employee, the employee won the court case because of those two board members discussing the person. So I don't know, I wouldn't want to, I don't want to put any words in the lawyer's mouth at this point, so I'd rather have her say yay or nay or how this ought to say. That's my suggestion. I just remember this court case, and one of the ones I always go away from, oh, that's how I'm going.
I think that was what Amy had said in our training too.
Further clarification would definitely be,
yeah, I think that,
I just hate for it to say you can't converse, and basically get hung on that language when it's perfectly permissible. Of course, I understand discussing confidential information as far as employees and all that stuff. Again, all of this is available through public records requests, but yeah, if we could get further clarification, that would be great. I'd feel more comfortable in that.
and I would be happy to, if you'd like me.
Okay, thank you.
To send this and reach out to them. The other question I had as I read this as you're doing it is that you can have we just mentioned it, you can't have a board member on the phone or through communications, during a board meeting as a part of it. As long as you have somebody physically here, you can actually have more than one board member out there, as long as there's at least one board member physically here and everybody can hear them. So that, I wonder if we want to tweak the language because of that too. So I had a second question.
So Mr. Rush will talk to Amy about those
I
two
will.
questions.
I'll send this to Amy and post some questions, and I might, Jefferson, if you wouldn't mind emailing your thought to me.
Okay,
So I have it, and you don't have to make it very fancy, but
sure.
just so I have it.
All right,
I'll forward that to her and,
I'll have it to you by tomorrow.
okay,
Okay.
that'd be great.
All right.
You don't have to hurry.
Right. I try to be punctual, otherwise it gets put off, so.
Madam Chair, the question I come to occasionally is, whether we need to put what's in the law in our policies, and I'm not sure that that's necessary other than just as an education process, but I don't know. Sometimes I wonder why we put so much stuff in our policy because it's already law. I'm not sure it's necessary. That's the point I'd make.
I agree with that. I think oftentimes we end up putting policies up by not repeating our law. Sometimes, I will tell you, the law says you have to put that in your policy, so we just have to figure that out. There's oftentimes we're just repeating stuff where we could reference the law. You could easily put a reference in. And I kind of like that approach, just to shorten things up.
Do we need to take a vote on this?
No, we don't.
I don't think we need to
Move
take
the
that.
agenda for next week or next month.
Okay, move that to next month. Okay, informational items. Update on open meeting violations. In January, the board received a letter from the Jim County Attorney's Office. I opened the letter, the info was sent to Anderson, Julian, and Hull, the school board's attorney. They wrote a letter back to the Jim County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. I checked with our attorney to see if there's any updates. And Amy was out of the office at this time, so Brett Walther, he's the one that took that piece on. And he said back in his email to me that he has not heard of any updates on that. So we wanted to bring that out to the open meeting to let everybody know where we are on that process. So that's all I had on that. Okay, moving on. We have the budget preparation. Mr. Rush.
Have it for reference. And this won't be as long as last time. Unless you ask lots of questions, then you can take it as long as you want. So tonight I want to talk a little bit about the expensive side of the budget. So last time I went through, talked about the revenue side of the budget. Again, the terms. When we talk fiscal year, we're talking July 1 to June 30. FY19 is our current fiscal year, 2018 to 2019. FY20 is fiscal year 2019 to 2020. Our adopted budget is FY19. We adopted that in 2018. Our amended budget, or the one we're looking at, the working budget that you see every month, you will amend that in June, make it an official amended budget, but we give you the updates all the way along. We try not to hide there, we just want you to see it as we go along. Your FY20 budget is to be set at that June meeting. You set that tonight. ADA is average daily attendance, and your support unit is used to determine funding. In that sheet, there was a whole sheet like this, and I just pulled the kind of the critical components out of it from this sheet. And what I wanted you to see in this sheet is just very simply is that, I'm going to grab my pointer here, is that this is a sheet that Cheryl goes through to calculate what our support units are, so we can estimate our support units for next year. So we go through and we estimate, and in that sheet, you'll notice there was a top sheet which looked at every school and how many students were in each one. It comes down to this second area. I didn't put the top sheet in here. I figured this was plenty. So you'll see, okay, preschool, but you'll notice that preschool doesn't give us any units. Preschool's funded a little differently in that process. Kindergarten admin, we expect about 208 students. We always go through and add attendance. So we have to estimate what our attendance is going to be. We generally run about 95.5. That's our tradition. So we generally estimate for that, but you'll notice when we get down to alternative high school, we put in a lower number because we never get as good attendance at alternative high school. So we do an estimation on our attendance. Patriot Center, you'll notice, has a very high number. You might imagine why. As we go through those. So we have students. You'll notice here that as you look at kindergarten, and then you get to admin is the term the state uses. So that's what we've always used is this K through admin. I've never figured out why they call it that. Have you ever understood it? Never figured that one out. Never really cared. I know what it means. So for our 1 to 3 students, we expect to have 607. We've gone through, we actually run new numbers as we go through to figure where we are right now, what we're expecting, and do the best guess we probably can. We pull out of that number special ed students. Now, this is a calculated number from special ed. It's not actual special ed students. Matter of fact, it isn't the number of special ed students we have. It's
a percentage.
It's a percentage, and it's a percentage set by the state. I'm going to kill you on this computer. Well, it's a percentage. Yeah, and he looks up and it works. Would you just start staring at the board? I appreciate it. But this is a percentage set by the state. So what happens is that when we come across here, the unit divisors for 1 to 3 students is 20. So for every 20 students, we get 1 unit. Okay, that's how that's calculated. Our 4-6 admin, the unit divisor is 23 students. And our 7-12 admin, our unit divisor is 18.5. Now we calculate, we expect 1,000 students in 7 through 12, and 195 is we're taking out Payette River Technical Academy. So that's what that 195 is about. Okay. OLA, it says a 12 divisor, but at 16.5 to students or below, you only get 1 support unit. So we get 1 support unit up there when we're below 16.5. They currently have 16 students with attendance ADA. We look at 15.28. It's just an estimate. Suite, we have a 13 divisor. Now I'm going to stop there. So I want to come back to this special ed. So we've taken these special ed kids out up here and we've put them back in. You see this 166.2 down here, and that gives us a 14.5 divisor is what we can use on that. So we get 11.46. So they give us a little extra for the number for those special ed students. Our special ed numbers actually are closer to 300 rather than 166. We almost double that amount. So we don't get funded for most of only about half of our students. Get some additional funding for it.
Excuse me, Wayne, you'll get the regular funding for them, but not the extra for special ed, is that what you're saying?
We get the regular funding for them. So any of them that are up here that we haven't pulled out in that 49, we're dividing by 20 or 23 or whatever the divisor is for that. Okay. We come up with a support unit of 124.98 and we calculate that all out. Okay. So this is where we are. We estimate 124.98. The only thing I know about that number is I'm wrong. I just hope I'm wrong in the right way. Because it's average daily attendance. And I'll tell you, we're going to figure out average days of attendance by the number of students that show up. The first calculation is November 5th, from the beginning of school to November 5th. And the next calculation is the best 28 weeks out of the school year. And we'll find out best 28 weeks in June. So it's a good estimate because we've been through this enough, but we know that it'll be a change. And you'll see it right here.
Madam Chair, Mr. Rush. So we had some dialogue about this. I think Cheryl brought that up. We haven't missed that number very often, correct?
We haven't very often. We had one since about 9 years, we had one bad year. We're not even sure why. We tried to figure out why, but generally we're close. But this is what we do. So we're at 124.9. We are budgeting. Cheryl and I sit around, we talk, and we say, what do you think we ought to do? We always budget at a smaller number than what that is. About one support unit less makes sense to us, especially because we're in a growing mode. It seems like that would be appropriate. We're looking at that. If you look at what we did last year, we adopted a budget at 122. Right now, we're at 123.5. Okay, that's first reporting period through November 5th. So it gives you that idea of where we are. That will change a little bit when we get to the final year or so, end of the year, to determine what that is. A support unit this year is worth 111,000 right there. Is worth about 111,000. We just divide the number into it so you can kind of have an idea what a support unit's worth to you. Any questions on that? So what I'm telling you, we want to build our budget on 124. That goes into a whole bunch of calculations. Let's see. So let's talk about things that I think we need to do within the budget this next year. One of the things we need to do is we need to deal with second grade and our class sizes. To be honest with you, we kind of lived through it this year at 28 and 27 students in second grade. We really ought to be at 25 or below in second grade. Next year, we're looking at 28 to 32 in second grade. And we really believe that we're not really providing the good foundation you need at those younger grades in teaching reading and getting them prepared so they're ready to go forward. So we believe we need to add a teacher at each one of these grades to do that. What that will do, and I think I put it in here, is that it'll move it from about 28 to 32 to 22 to 24 students. We might get some growth in those grades, and if we do, that gives us a little space to add a student if we need to, or two, without hurting us too much. This may not be a popular opinion, but I believe we ought to hire one new position, and I think we need to move our second grade teacher, our second teacher from OLA to second grade to handle it, just to get it in the budget. We are very close, and I didn't pull this sheet up, and I can if you'd like to, and if you want at the next board meeting, we can do that. We're very close to the number and the amount of teachers that we're allowed to hire that we get funded on. We go over that number, we don't get funded. But from budgeting school district budget, I always believe you ought to be hiring less teachers than what you're allowed for to balance the budget in Idaho. And 5 is probably appropriate. We're right at 2, I think, right now. So there just isn't much room there to add additional teachers. There isn't also a lot of room in the budget to add additional teachers to do that. So that's one of the proposals that I think we need to do. I'm not asking for the board to make any decisions tonight, okay? At the May board meeting, I'll bring some of these to you. You'll make your final decision when you set the budget in June. But I don't want any surprises, and I'm gonna probably ask you to vote on something in the May board meeting, maybe not this one, but I generally like to bring salaries to you so that you kind of say, yeah, that looks like a good way.
When you say move second grade teacher from OLA to second grade, where's the destination?
We, well, Shadow Butte or Carberry would be one of them. I don't know which one. I mean, it would be staffing changes that we would be working on. Sometimes that depends on the person, where they would like to go and those types of areas. And sometimes they say, I really don't want to teach second grade. I really want to teach in this fourth grade position. And so we move people around. And it's kind of this normal process that we do.
So you mean from even within classes, but from school to school as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is when I'm talking this area, I'm talking a position, not a person. In other words,
what do we do with the position? Now, we work with the person too in the processes, but the people part of it could be a lot of other different moves that go on. I've seen 4 or 5 moves because this position opens and that person wants it, and you get all this movement around, which is fine. But we're talking, I look at this from a position perspective. I come back to this chart that I have, and I update this quite often, go through and check my numbers. Are we doing right? Look at it, what we are, and play with those numbers as we go through it. So I really look at it from positions from that. This chart, I will tell you, does not include, these are classroom teachers in a classroom. This doesn't include a special ed teacher or all the other staff that are around that. These are actually, so I'm looking at the load of the classroom here, not the overall load.
Not what aides they may have. And
not what aides they have and those types of pieces, so.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Hate to be,
No, ask lots of questions.
no, and it doesn't pertain to this, but on our online viewership, are we getting much viewership of our meetings? I'm just wondering
I don't know.
if we'll get complaints by people if they can't see what we're talking about, the people that are watching at home.
If they want to see this,
In the board
it is
packet.
actually in the
Yeah.
board packet that's online, so they can go to our website.
You know how humans are for.
Hold on, look.
Yeah.
If I may, I've never received any complaints.
Okay.
I've had it suggested a couple of times.
Okay.
But then once they see is the camera zooms in and out constantly because of the light reflection.
Okay.
And usually the words are too small.
Mhm.
I don't know how we could do it. I don't know
Well,
if it's
just-
technology we could do it.
Turning the camera, but if you get a complaint, great. If you don't, even better.
That could put out a survey maybe.
No, we're not looking to go to those links.
So the other thing I will tell you about tonight's kind of budget piece, I'm doing this from a pretty high level, so I'm not getting down very deep in the weeds tonight. Cheryl gets down very deep in the weeds to the dollar and penny. So she's right now working on calculations to say, okay, we discovered something. She discovered something interesting today. For example, we're going to get a bunch more lottery funds this next year, about 40 more thousand than what we got this year. And they're going to take 40,000 away from maintenance match. And I'm thinking they're getting more lottery money, so they're not putting in the money from the general fund, and that's how they're balancing some budgets. That was one of the things I discovered today. So, yeah, we're getting more lottery. We're just, give it to you over here and take it away over here. So,
Robbing Peter to pay Paul.
and that's the type, she gets really down in the weeds, exactly how all that gets calculated out for us. So the other threat to our budget, I don't want to use that term, is health insurance. So our fully funded plan right now, we're looking at a 16.7% increase. What I will tell you about that 16.7% is when our consulting firm did the calculations, they expected us to get a much larger increase from this. And talking with the company, in their first calculations, it would have been about 26 to 27% increase. So this is a pretty solid, good number with the fluff taken off. So there isn't, it's calculated from our firm, had nothing to do with it there. And so, but it's pretty expensive when you look at this. So that, for the PPO, so we have a PPO and an HSA, and I'm just going to talk PPO here. For the PPO, which is preferred provider, whatever the old is. Option. Preferred provider option is $97.57 per employee per month is what that would cost.
That's just a 16.7%.
That's 16.7 increase. The increase is $97.57. That's not the total bill.
Right.
That's $1,100 per employee, and the total dollar amount of that 16.7% increase to our district would be $329.06. Now, a little bit about how we do this, and this is not negotiations, so don't, we will discuss it in negotiations, but we negotiate a number that the district puts in. So we don't actually, we don't we work from these numbers, but we put in right now $590. That's what the district puts in. And the employee has to pay whatever the difference is. So the employee pays right now $47 and some cents on this. This would be essentially $150 more, $140, or if it all went to the employee. But generally, through negotiations and through the budgeting process too. I mean, we have to say what we can afford as a district. And I'll be honest with you, we can't afford $329,000. I mean, I haven't figured that out in the budget. So that's a piece to that. The other thing we're talking about is going to partially self-insured. And Mr. Weeks there spent a half a day and a full day with us learning about partially self-insured. And I think he learned a lot, if I'm correct in that.
You learn a lot.
If we went to a partially self-insured, we will still see an increase about 13.3%. You understand when we're talking insurance, we can't just say, oh, we'll cut this number. We've got to use a real number that's solid that we can work from. But that brings your employee per month down to 177 or 7770, 932 per year, and 253,000 for that. I don't have the sheet in front of me, and I can bring it to the next board meeting. We can talk about what that means for employees. The worst part about the employee is somebody who has a family on insurance. So a family on insurance on the fully funded 16.7% is a $3,000 increase to the family for the year. It's about a $2,100 increase under the self-funded. So
Is this issue across the state?
health insurance is an issue across the state. 16.7% is Emmett's issue. And it has to do with cancer. We've had a lot of cancer. And what you'll find in health insurance always is you have 4 good years and you'll have 1 bad year. Sometimes 2 bad years. And then you go back to 4 good years. I mean, that's.
So are we our own pool?
We are our own pool. We're not a pool, but we're our own.
In that sense, what he's thinking, we're on.
Yeah. The other part about being self-funded that has to come into this discussion is that we have to, required by the Department of Insurance, on September 1, we have to have reserves in an account, okay? So, Mr. Weeks, and you've approved 3 trustees, so it goes into a trust account, goes into an account that's a trust. And actually, all the bills are paid from that trust. So the district would simply, like we do right now, we send a check to the insurance company. We'd send it to the trust account. Nice thing is, it stays in the trust account. The insurance company doesn't take it from that part. But they do require up front that we have reserves. The first reserve that's required is called incurred but not reported. So what that is that I go to the doctor and it takes 20 days, 30 days before that bill gets paid, right? Gets through the insurance company. 60, sometimes it's 60 days. I mean, kind of depends, is it reviewed, whatever. So you have to have and the state calculates this, the percentage you have to have in there of what you have to have for incurred but not reported. The interesting thing about this number is that when you start insurance September 1, there are no bills. There won't be a bill probably for 3 weeks, except for medical insurance. Your pharmacy starts pretty quick. Because your pharmacy is done generally on a card and it's instant billing. The pharmacies have got that one down, but the doctors and the rest of them are scattered out from that part of it. But generally you don't have it. So one way to fund this is to say, well, let's put the money up front in there and we know we're going to use it over time because it's a part of the expense that we're expecting. That's an expected expense throughout the year. So we may figure out how to do that. I'm not proposing how I'm doing it. I'm telling you all the bad news this month, and then I'm going to tell you, I'm going to ask for another thing from you. Sorry. I'm going to ask for another meeting soon to make a decision on self-funding. But I'll tell you why I don't want to do it tonight. One, I'm not ready, but two, I need a committee to get together first and do some recommendations. The next part of the reserve is that you have to have 1/2 of the, what they call the reserve requirement, funded at the beginning of the year. So that's another $187,341. So our reserve requirement is $3,509 and
Yeah, 829.
yeah. Is what our reserve requirement is. So there's two issues we're going to have to deal with this next year. One is, how do we handle the increase in insurance? Okay. And secondly, if we want to go self-funded, how do we handle the reserves? And where do those come from? What I'm going to ask the board to do, and this is in my board report, and I didn't know how to put them together, so I'm just doing it this way. What I'm going to ask the board to do is probably meet next week sometime, and just to focus on making a decision on partially self-funded insurance. And at that point, I will have a plan of what I believe we can do, and I think we can do this. Cheryl and I have been looking at some numbers and some figures, but we're not ready. I don't have enough to do that yet. Tomorrow at afternoon, I've got our insurance committee meeting to just go through so they can see all these rates and all this stuff. We had quite a committee there, and a lot of our insurance committee were there at the meetings with the TPA. We did select the company we want to go TPA. We'd like to stick with Pacific Source as our partially self-funded. TPA is our third-party administrator. Our community's been very pleased with them as a company. They've done a great job for us. And quite frankly, they came in much more competitive than the others. This requirement right here, if we went with Regents, was $1 million.
Mr. Rush.
Yeah.
So I would have to concur with that after sitting at a day and a half worth of meetings. As a businessman, I don't always have to have the cheapest. It just so happens that this TPA happened to come in the cheapest. Sitting there, I would hope that as teachers in this community, I would want them to feel, I guess the best word is the love that they had towards the staff in this community. There was a couple of the other TPAs there that they were all business. And in dealing with as much insurance as I've dealt with over the years, this particular Pacific Source, you wouldn't have got that from the other two, I don't believe. I don't feel that they were completely, I don't know that they had all the knowledge as what was the one in Washington, Mr. Rush?
HSA.
HSA. I don't know that they were specifically dedicated to specifically partially self-funded, but what they brought to the table as far as being willing to work with us and the care that they would give was hands down for me a selling point. So I need you to know that choice that we chose that day was what needed to be chose for the community and the teachers that are in this community.
So they're the healthcare provider?
Yes.
Or the administrator?
They're the third-party administrator. So your healthcare provider is your hospital and doctor and the network.
Okay.
That's it. This is your third-party administrator.
They take care of the paperwork.
They take care of the paperwork. Nice thing about going with self-funding is you know what you're paying them. So I think, and I'll bring all these. I didn't intend to bring this tonight. When we meet again, I'll bring that. But I think their bill for us for running all that's $108,000. Right at that, maybe 107 something. So you know exactly what I'm paying the third-party administrator.
Yep.
And that one of the other nice things about it, if I'm going fully self-funded, even with them, administrative costs go up 16.7% next year. because it's based on a percentage of whatever they're doing here. In these contracts, we have a 3-year guarantee on that price. So it doesn't go. You're just able to control a lot more than you are otherwise. First year, it's not a big deal. Where the big deal is this: we calculate this number. We only calculate we'll save $77,000 next year. That's all we calculate we'll save by doing this. However, if you really look at it, the potential is you could have a $300,000 savings, because you're saying this is what we really expect to spend. Everybody figures that out. This is what we expect to spend on insurance, and in good years, you're spending $400,000 less. If you look back through our experience over about the past 8 years, we've had 1 year with fully funded where we actually met kind of what was expected, the total amount expected, and every other year we were $300,000 to $400,000 less. And if we had been putting that into a fund and saving that, this bad year would have been, well, we'd complain, right? But it would have been easy to handle. It wouldn't have been a big problem. So there's advantages to doing this that are long. This is a long-term investment, not a short-term. I expect to save a ton of money. Now, as I showed here, you're saving $253 from $329, so you are saving money from that part. Any more questions on health insurance? So again, I'm just showing you what I'm calling the risk. So I'm just trying to. I don't want any surprises. Well, there'll be plenty of them, but I want to limit the surprises as we go through this process. Okay.
We're picking a plan for employees, or are we just picking an entity and the plan will come later?
When we apply for self-funding, we actually pick everything. So one of the nice things is when you're self-funded, you sit down and say, this is what I want in the plan. And so you actually go through it. First year, we would keep the plan very close and similar to what we have right now. We probably wouldn't make a lot of changes with it. We could make a few tweaks to it. But the other thing you have to do is when the trustees and this committee gets together, somebody's going to come up with an idea and says, well, I think we ought to reduce our deductibles by $1,000, okay? Everybody say that. Well, why we pay SOFIS. Kelly from SOFIS is a actuary that is one of the top actuaries in the West in health. I'll tell you, he has, SOFIS is a small little company. He does, I think, for the fun of it. He makes his money on the actuary side. And I've talked with lots of other, there's another self-funding firm. They changed their name. It was
Not.
anyway that I've spoke with about it, and they use Kelly as their actuary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he just, that's what he does. He works for lots of different companies, lots of big companies. and as I've looked into this in depth, what I've discovered is where people go broke and make mistakes is they start changing their policy too fast. And they don't have the actuary behind it to tell you, I'm sorry, that $1,000 is going to cost you $400,000 here. So that you know what the number is. Otherwise you're broke. You really will go broke. So you've got to have it. You got to treat it like I am a business of an insurance company, and I'm not going to go out and do this in the backwoods. I'm going to do it with the right people.
And again, Kelly, after sitting there with me for a day and a half, I need the board to know he knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
He asked a lot of hard questions to those guys in the interviews, and he made them all answer them. And he's on your side, and he's all about cost and getting the right job done. So I need to openly say to the board, this was good. I was pretty hesitant about wanting to do anything like this. It was good for me to be there and be a part of this process. And I think that, Mr. Rush and everybody that was there, it was me to see this and be a part of it. And if you got some questions, you can ask me. I can try and answer them. I guarantee he'll better answer them better. But the right people are in the right place as far as moving this forward.
On this self-funding, when you have incidences like you were talking about cancer, is there a limit to what this insurance pays?
So you'll notice this word is called partially self-funding. So in this plan we're looking at, and I'm sorry I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but there is $500,000 of insurance that we are going to buy that does two things. One, an individual policy on every employee at $100,000. So if you end up in the hospital and you spend, $200,000, our liability stops at $100,000 and the insurance company pays everything beyond that.
Okay.
So we're covered on that. The second policy we buy, which quite frankly is really cheap, that policy in this is about $450,000, somewhere in that range. So it's a pretty expensive policy. The other policy you buy is you buy stopgap insurance. So we expect to spend $1,999,000. That's actually in this expectation next year and in what we pay out. That would be what you'd expect. You buy insurance at 120% of that, okay? So if the wheels come off and we have half our teachers gassed, then when you hit that point, they pay 100% beyond it. So you know what your total liability is. They're not out there.
Does the actuary have they looked at our demographics of ages and say we could expect to be this much expense in this group and this much expense? So you have a pretty good idea where you're going to be at the end of the day.
And actually, it's the other thing that you get out of this, and it's been the thing I've been very critical of the state's pool, is because you don't get any of that data. We actually know how much we're spending on Humira, how much we're spending on the various drugs that are out there. What are the diseases we have? What are the ones, and quite frankly, we don't know the names. I say that, but as a small community, you know who's struggling, so that part. But from an insurance standpoint, from the legal perspective, I don't know those people, and that's never reported to us individually. But we know what the big expenses are and what we're expecting and how many we're expecting, and from that part of it.
So we're going into it with eyes wide open.
Eyes wide open. Matter of fact, one of the things that's why a lot of districts can't do this is they've been in the pool and they have no data. So they don't know any of that stuff, and they have no way of getting that data. That's how Blue Cross keeps the
corner on the market.
Keeps the corner on the market.
Well, previously, if you go back to the 16.7 and come in that was much lower than what they had suggested it would be, they're still accounting for that, even at that number, was my understanding.
They are.
And so all that's accounted for. I mean,
you can feel we can take hits and still stay tread water.
Yes, if it's done correctly, and it has to be done in increments. It can't just be gung ho.
No, and that's why, honestly, that's why I say your first year, you don't change your plan. You tweak the little dollars, right? I mean, that's, when we tried to do this last time, I got real irritated when I discovered that the company would be very happy to have your foot cut off because you had diabetes, but they wouldn't pay anything to help you not get your foot cut off. And I thought, oh, well, that's stupid. But
Prefer to have it.
there are things to tweak as we go through it, but we need to be very careful how we do it. And honestly, I wouldn't want to go into this. The other companies here in Idaho, I actually like them guys. They'd probably want to do, but I think you need somebody like Kelly. You sit with him for a while and you realize why he's worth every penny. It's because he knows that stuff and
Well,
pretty honest about it.
Yeah, he's very open and honest about it, but not only if they choose to go self-funding or partially self-funding, but even for self-funding, all those questions for him to be a mediator is a big thing. Just with that day and a half that I sat there listening and learning.
How healthy is he?
He's a good negotiator. He's as healthy as he's much lighter than I am.
Yeah, he's a young sprite kid.
Okay, so the other things we're looking at here is salaries. So teacher salaries, and I'm moving on if that's okay. I don't want to. So teacher salaries, there is a new required minimum. Our governor will be moving that number to 40,000 over the next 2 years. So this year, that number will be 38.5. So we have to pay our new teachers 38.5. The legislature came back in another bill and slipped this into that other bill, literally. And so when a new teacher comes in, they're on a residency rung for 3 years, residency rungs for 1, 2, 3 years. And then they can move, if they meet a standard, they can move to the professional rung. What they did this year to us is they're requiring us to spend $42,500 on the professional rung. The threat to our district, if I look at it as a threat, but it's a wonderful thing for teachers, is that, you know me, I'm a budget guy, is that this is going to cost us some money because we've used some of those funds to help pay the top end of it. We're now going to have to move them back down to pay at this level from what the state's requiring us. Negotiators, who are they? You.
Jefferson, Terry.
Wake up.
Okay. So we will work through that, all of that. I started working on the spreadsheet that we use to build this so that we can actually come up, how much would it cost if we had this kind of raise? And I will tell you, I take this group of people and Mike Bruni sits on that committee, and I send him my spreadsheet and I say, fix my spreadsheet, Mike, tell me what's wrong with it. No, we're not talking about the negotiating part of it, but the calculations part of it. And I will tell you, the other thing they did is this is the 5th year implementation of the career ladder. So right now we have 10 steps in the professional area, and they're moving them to 5. And I spent some time on the spreadsheet trying to figure out how you do that, and I haven't figured it out yet. So Mike and I really do need to sit down and have a conversation. I had the law up on this screen and trying to figure it out. It's going to take some time to figure that one out. Classified administration, the state appropriated 3% increase in that area. The challenge for us is that we have a lot more employees than the state funds us for, so that we don't have 3% for every employee. So we have to figure out how to do that. Next month, what I'll be doing on that is bringing you actually a list of all the employees and what the recommended raise is, what I'm going to propose to you. So you'll get to see it all. This is Rush playing around, just so you know. I'm estimating about a $400,000 increase in salaries when we look at career ladder and everything else in there. Maybe less than that, you know, but that's just Rush. We'll know a lot more when we do go through negotiations. Other budget items, and I'm almost done here. Adjustments for statutory requirements. So we've got a bunch of things that are statutory that says you will spend the money in this area. So a lot of times when you look at this budget, you'll say, well, I don't want to spend so much money in professional development. And we're going to look at you and say, but unfortunately, the state's given us this amount of money in professional development, and we have to spend that much in professional development. We don't get to reduce that amount. And there's about $600,000 of statutory requirements that are built into the budget throughout it that are required expenditures in those categories. So you can kind of see those when you look at your budget. You'll see on your budget sheet, there's a, Cheryl, what's it called? It's a program. There's a program section. A lot of times it'll say instructional improvement.
Oh, yes.
So you'll see there's a column called program, and if you look down, a lot of times it's blank, and then every now and then it'll say instructional improvement, or it'll say something like that. That's one of these statutory requirements.
Oh, okay.
You kind of pick that up as you go through it. It just gives you a clue. Increases in operating costs. We don't actually see a lot this year in, I haven't heard anything from Idaho Power, it doesn't look like, and you know, those types of things. So I don't think we're going to see very many operating costs there. We do have some operating costs because the tech guy, in technology, there's some software pieces, but none of those are very big. $2,500, those types of things. So they're not huge number items. And of course, we're building this whole budget based on passing the levy. So the budget will be built with all of that in it. And partly because of the timing. We don't really have much other choice as to this process. If we don't pass the levy, first Cheryl's going to scream and hit me, and then she will build a budget with that 1.5 million out of it. So next month, I will bring some more specific proposals to the budget. It'll probably will be done by next month, but it'll be getting really pretty close. And we'll talk about things like salaries. So that you kind of said, yes, I see what you want to do with salaries. That looks good. Let's move forward with that in our budget. So, okay.
Mr. Rush, I have one more question, please. If it's all right, Madam Chair. So when you're building that budget for next year, do you have an estimation of cost of increase, whether it's natural gas, idle power? Are you figuring any of that into there? Or are you just going off of kind of what it has been the last 6 months?
Generally, we find out from idle power or others if they have requested an increase through the PUC. And we haven't seen anything come through. So generally, we're going to probably build this budget on the current cost of power. We probably won't look at this last year, like in power and gas. We're probably going to look back a little further. This was a pretty warm year for a lot of it. And so we probably look back a little further and look at an average rather than just, you kind of get in trouble if you look at just the last year. It's either, you got a really bad year and you spent a bunch. And so we try to find an average that we can do. So, but it's, look at are there rate issues coming up? Generally, you'll see those a few months in advance. So that's, we kind of estimate on that. But the usage is the one where we try to do more of an average over a few years rather than just pick last year.
Have you seen quite a variation in usage between cold years and warmer years?
We do see a variation. We do.
Okay.
Yeah. And for example, we'll put in the same money for snow removal as we have in this budget because we haven't even spent it, but you're not going to, we didn't do any snow removal, so we'll take it out of the budget.
Obviously, it's not going to snow again, right?
Yeah. Those types of things you have to, that's why you got to really look back.
Well,
We may have to start using it for.
I assume that's what you did. I just wanted to ask the question for the
Good question.
people listening,
Oh,
that
good.
that it is followed up, that it goes back, maybe even to the last 10 years, that, as far as what our winters have looked like. And
So first, you need to know how good of a business manager you have working for you. Cheryl's done this job an awful long time, and she doesn't like to talk in front of groups, and that's a mistake because she really is extremely knowledgeable. And like today, she walks in and she says, "No, I'm looking at this number of students and I'm looking at last year's, and this is a lot more than last year. So why is it? And should we really be budgeting on that number?" And so, I start asking her questions, and she has to go back and go, "Oh yeah, I'll look at that year and this year and compare." And she's really on it to make sure. The other thing she is she's very conservative. So my job is to push her to be a little bit more liberal, not too liberal, because she won't let me. But we've been able to work out that we come up with. We're generally not far off. I can't say that's. There are times when we.
No crystal ball.
I'm guessing on enrollment next year. I'm still guessing on enrollment this year. So how do I know? But
thank you both.
Cheryl does a very nice job. And if you ever want to just ask her, she really knows the real tiny detail in there.
Soon.
We like Cheryl. She always has a smile.
She always smiling.
Okay, thank you.
Goes a long way.
Okay, moving on. We have C, levy information.
Yeah, pass that down, please. We're just in the process. This is the first draft of this brochure. It's going to change, I assure you. We have a committee meeting tomorrow night. We've been asking people messages and what messages we think are good, those types of things. So this is the informational brochure. And we will, and if you have any input, if you want to read this and email me some thoughts on it, I'd love that. Appreciate it. One of the things that happens now, the chart, I will tell you, don't look at it.
The chart will change. That's the chart from last year. I've just left it in there as I saw you looking at it, Jody, so I left that in from the last time. Piper Jaffrey, Eric is going to give me a new chart with the actual numbers in it for this year so that we can say this is what our levy rate would be. We're at 144 on that chart, and I think on that chart we're showing 290 or something without looking at it. But we'll be revising this and should have it done by this next weekend. We need to get it out. The next thing we'll do with it, the back panel disappears off this. So that part we sacrifice and we turn this black and white and we mail it to every home in the community. So we use a mailing service out of Boise that uses a bulk rate, mails it to every home in the community. So that'll be things. But if you've got suggestions, I see, take a pen to it. Seriously, we know it's rough. I mean,
Okay.
That's where we are. We know it's rough, so don't feel bad about. And if you don't like the way we said something, just scribble and send it out. I mean, we're very happy to have you look at it. We want you to look at it from that perspective. And we'll have a whole bunch of other eyes looking at it in the next few days as we go through this.
What time is the meeting tomorrow?
Meeting is 6 o'clock tomorrow. For the board, I will say we did host this meeting. So if you want to come as a board member, you can all show up. This is the Citizens Committee meeting. So
Where at?
they're meeting here. Room 4.
Thank you.
Yeah, room 4 in Butteview, Citizens Committee's meeting on the levy tomorrow, 6 o'clock. That was the ad for the people watching. We will begin posting things. We've already had, there was an article in the paper this week, just talking kind of about both the bond work and the levy work. So I'll just leave it at that. Got any suggestions? Send them to me, please.
All right, moving on, gathering information on proposal for bond.
So I was talking with a couple of you about this and what I would like to propose to the board, I'm not asking for an action item. I just would like a consent if the board says you want me to do that. But the committee that's been working on this is looking at, has a proposal. It's really a pretty high level proposal, but what they don't have are numbers. And I've given them some estimates, but I would like to move forward with working with some people in the community and some others to get better estimates, not probably to move us forward so the board can make a decision towards a bond. I think it's going to take a couple months, 3 months to get that done. So I'd like to start now. There's a bunch of preliminary work we can do in the next and get you some better numbers by May, and then continue down that path as we go forward. And probably in May, bring you a proposal that says, here's what you're going to have to do if you want to run a bond. Selecting an architectural firm, moving forward. The other thing I would like to, so let me throw that out to the board. Are you comfortable with me moving forward, getting numbers so we can start moving forward on this decision?
Absolutely. I mean, we can't move any further without having some way to authenticate the thoughts.
Okay, we'll put numbers together. Any other comments from any other?
Madam Chair, I would like to have some options as well. I think what I was expecting, I guess, was not what I'm going to get, and that is, I wanted to see some options that would do what's necessary with the costs involved in each option, and I think we're just getting one proposal, and that's not what I wanted.
Okay, I'll put some numbers together and
I agree. I think that we have to have some options because ultimately the board's going to make that decision, and I want to know if A has this grouping and B has this grouping and C is maybe parts of these two. It's, you know, we can move that chess game around and put those numbers together to get a better picture.
And the reason I'm proposing this to the board, I think you need some numbers. So that's why I think we need to move forward. And options would be great. I'll be happy to put some different options and numbers together for you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Rush, when you come back with those numbers and options, will you be able to facilitate to us where you're receiving those options from, please?
Yep.
Anything else for Mr. Rush? Move on.
One other item, I would like to invite the board to Monday night, the facilities committee meeting. Eric Herringer from Piper Jaffray will be there talking about bonds and what bonds cost. And
This is the 15th.
that's the 15th, on Monday, the 15th, 6 o'clock here. You will find it very interesting. Eric does a very nice job, knows this business really well. So if you want to learn about bonds, Eric's the guy to go talk to be honest with you. So he actually presents every year at Auto School Association. So
Did everybody get that?
Is that 6 o'clock?
Yes.
the other thing I asked the board for when I was standing up there, but we never, is can you meet next week or latest the week after early to look at partial self-funding? I think that'd be the only thing on the agenda, and it would be a decision-making agenda.
I have the 16th and the 18th open.
I cannot on the 16th. I can on the 18th. We're talking.
Yeah.
Bill, what was your days?
I've got the commitment on Tuesdays, every Tuesday.
Yeah, okay.
So,
The 18th, Thursday.
The board wanted to go
Bob
earlier
says no.
today.
I'm leaving that day. My only day that I have available is the 15th.
I'm good for that too.
The facility meeting
Early in
that
the day
day.
would work better.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
We just talked about that.
Could we possibly go the next week after that? What about the next week? Or Bob, you're gonna be gone.
Bob's gone for a while.
If he's going, we might as well meet the first one then.
Yeah.
Why not do it the 18th? He's gonna be gone a while anyway.
Okay.
That's all right. I just have to be told when and where to be.
I can the 18th, it's fine.
Cause I think this is kind of time sensitive,
Yes.
right?
It's time sensitive. The other thing we have to do is submit an application in May to the Department of Insurance. So
Yeah.
we've got to move. We've got to make a decision, yes or no, and go. I mean, that's where we are. And I think you'll have, and Ronnie got to see a lot of numbers. You'll have the information you need to make a decision.
What time on the 18th? 2 in the afternoon?
That would work for me.
Oh, no.
It's between milkings.
What time are you available, Ronnie? Bob's gone, so you're more of an evening person?
Well, not on that particular day, but it's, I'm good for whatever. You just tell me what time to be there and I'll be there.
Jefferson?
Same.
Bill?
I'm good.
Mr. Rush, what, you prefer mid-afternoons?
Of course.
Like,
I only have
We
4
do-
meetings this week.
When you say mid-afternoon, are we talking 4 o'clock?
yeah,
Oh,
would that,
I'm good with that.
just two.
Whatever you would like.
Good.
that would be good?
That would be real good.
So we're talking 4 o'clock.
4
Yeah.
o'clock? District office? Insurance.
If you send me information, I'll try to call in, but I wouldn't guarantee that I'll be to my destination by then.
Okay.
I'll set up a a scope, or a Zoom meeting for you, Bob, and you can either call the phone number or you can use a computer, whatever you want.
Okay.
They won't be video, just audio, right?
I can do both.
Well, I don't know if I'll have connection. I don't know what I'm gonna have for again. I'm gonna be the Walmart in front of.
Okay, so the 18th, 4:00, district office insurance. On the 15th, facility meeting, 6 PM, district office with Piper Jeffrey. Okay. Okay, moving on, district reports. Superintendent report. Mr. Rush.
So I have a section on partially self-funded insurance. I'm going to just skip that. You can read it and then ask me more questions. We've kind of already talked about that. District safety planning. Somebody said they were interested in what happened from the lockdown. There's really no more information about the lockdown, but in just our safety planning processes, we actually provided training to all our principals on the emergency communications process through Infinite Campus, and have opened that up to them. So we're just wanted to come better ways on communicating. We have decided that we will use the district office as the instant command center and not have the principal take the burden of communicating with parents. We'll do that from here so that the principal can focus on the building and facility. We reviewed procedures for school buses in a crisis as they approach a school. One of the things I've instructed Shauna about is that if we have anything like that again, the buses need to stop until we can figure out what to do. And if some of those buses have to stop on Idaho Street in the middle of the road, stop on Idaho Street in the middle of the road till we know enough to do something on it, because I don't want to put kids in danger in any way, so we just have to do that. You know, bus drivers are uncomfortable with that, but I say they got all the lights in the world to turn on at a stop sign. I mean, they have more stopping ability than almost everybody else. And quite frankly, if you got an incident going down the road, you might as well throw the stop sign out and not let parents get down there too. I mean, so it's just a learning. We went through that process, so we needed to do that. Daniel Arola also arranged a meeting with the Office of School Security, that's a state office, and the local emergency management director to discuss improvements to our district-wide emergency management plan, and he's moving forward with the process of actually rewriting our plan. We have most of the stuff put together. We just need to put it into a better format and bring all the pieces in that we're actually using. So we just need to rewrite the district plan, the process we've been talking about.
Mr. Rush?
Yeah.
May I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
In response to that. When we talked about the communications plan at the last meeting, I openly said I assume that on our improvement plan, obviously that's information is disseminated to the very school, and then it obviously networks out throughout the district of what we learn in those instances. With that one, where Dan Ariola met with our local emergency management director, I'm curious, like, what takeaways maybe yourself or Mr. Adams took from our local law enforcement, because as I understand with this lockdown, it was actually designated by our local law enforcement. And obviously there was a situation that's hard to replicate when children are being dropped off, but clearly the doors had to be locked, and some parents didn't know. That's part of the communication process. But was there any indication from local law enforcement that since they're calling for lockdown, that they would disseminate officers to the school, maybe in the drop-off zone, and they would be the ones to prevent motorists from coming in, and then you don't have a situation with kids going to locked doors and that kind of thing? And then has that improvement plan been communicated with your staff, and then furthermore throughout the school district to the other facilities as far as what we learned?
So, and we can talk about it a little bit. And one of the things that our resource officer said that he would do in the next emergency is he would go to the building Now, that's making a bunch of assumptions.
Mhm.
Is he in the district?
Where's he at?
Is he
Yeah.
not in the district in that moment? How many officers do they have on patrol? Are they available to block roads and those types of things? So there is no guarantee or plan that that's exactly what we would do, but that is what he would like to do in a normal operational situation. The only thing you learn in these is that every one of them is not normal and how we do that. So yes, we did talk about it with principals and discussed about how we would do that, go through the training. We will continue through that process. I think our principals are really pretty good in the lockdown. One of the things we feel very good about this lockdown is that they called up and put us in lockdown. We thought that was the best piece. One of the conversations we talked about was, well, did we need to be in lockdown? Could it have been a secure and hold rather than a lockdown? And I think we all decided, Todd, that it's easier to go backwards than it is to go forward. So you go into lockdown, and if you say, we can go to secure and hold, we can move backwards on that. But that's a call that the principal will make in the building with the information that he can get at that time. So we are communicating that out. The meeting we had that Dan had, actually, I was in it, Mike Smith was in it, and God, who else was there with us? So we were just doing some high-level planning, and then we'll start moving it down. Each school has a committee, so these things also.
Can you add anything, Mr. Adams, as far as you feel better with the information, having gone through that process, as to how it can be improved upon if it were to reoccur?
One of the things that also came out of that meeting was when the SRO or police communicated the information to us, is getting us a little bit more information. All we had was the information of going into lockdown.
Right.
And so we talked about giving us at least direction so that we know, is it west of the school, is it on Idaho, is it on Mesa, things like that. Because that can help guide. And if they can get information of distance from the school, there's also some things, even though I go into lockdown, I can adjust and tweak. I think any principal can.
Right.
And so that was another big piece with the communication part there. And then the SRO definitely, if they can dedicate a person getting up to the school, that was going to be a priority, dependent upon that situation. I think one of the other things that we talked about a little bit too was the SRO being involved a little bit more with our drills when we do our lockdowns and the layouts and some of the processes that we go through. As far as on my side, our processes I'm really comfortable with, and we drill them enough that really once you get moving, it just is what you do.
And since you're in the county and the SRO is a city employee, are you confident in that layer of communication through, obviously it's being centralized through dispatch, but that communication between our SRO being a city employee into the sheriff's department, which would apply in your area?
I'm confident. I think they work together enough that, and that's what they do.
Okay.
I'm confident within their abilities.
Okay.
And at least in the Shadow Butte situation too, I mean, we're all understanding of response time up there. And so I'm confident within our site, our abilities of what we can do at that point too. So yeah, I'm plenty comfortable and confident with their abilities there.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it's fluid. I mean, being candid, there is a layer, an undertone a lot of times between city versus county departments, from fire to police. And I'm pretty privy to that. So I just wanted to make sure your SRO communicating to the sheriff's department, obviously everyone goes into emergency reaction. So I just want to make sure you're in a place that you're comfortable in.
Yeah. And I think really the tone of the meeting was, it really wasn't interdepartmental, it was a school.
Good.
And they were focused on that, really when it came down to it.
Cool. Thank you.
So yeah.
Appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you.
Facilities committee, just Eric's going to be there on Monday. Idaho School Boards Association Insurance Program. This is our property casualty insurance. Their offer came in this year, slight increase of $330. That was an increase due to enrollment. It's what the increase was, the purpose of the increase was. And I put in your packet, I think it's in an additional section down, the actual listing of all the policies. So if you want to spend some time looking at that, that's where we are. We've been very pleased with the Idaho School Board Association's policy. Very competitive price, and we haven't seen really any increases. $330 is pretty good in that. And ICRAM, which is actually the insurance company, is just excellent to work with. Cities, counties, and schools. As our company. The other item I put on here, and I kind of put this on late, so I did it, is that last year I was invited to become a member of Renaissance Advisory Board. This is an advisory group, and 2 years you can join it and work with Renaissance. And they do this to bring a select group of strategic educational leaders together. This is their words, to gain knowledge and insights to accelerate learning for all. It's really a great opportunity for those of us participating with them. One of the things, and you can kind of read it, but at the first on-site meeting we had, they brought in Mike Schmoker. Mike Schmoker is the author of Focus. He's one of the leading gurus in looking at what we need to be doing with education. And honestly, we're able to spend a day with him in a fairly intimate setting. There's probably 40 of us total there. And this type of, it's interesting. Schmoker had been in Idaho at the Idaho School Boards Association, the Idaho Superintendent Association meeting, speaking to a few hundred earlier in the year. And it was fun to be able to really spend some time and learn from him. Our next board meeting is in Portland, Oregon. It's May 1 and 3. And this time we get to spend some time with Rick Stiggins. Rick Stiggins is one of the gurus in assessment in the country, probably one of the top one out there. He is retired, and so he doesn't travel much and doesn't do a lot of presentations anymore. But because Renaissance Learning's center where they do assessments actually just across the river from Portland, and Rick Stiggins lives in Portland, he's going to come and spend a day with us talking about assessment and where we move with assessment pieces to this. Great opportunity for our district to learn, for me to learn and grow, and to bring back information to us so that we can do that. Renaissance is a company that does provide our district with our STAR testing and Plan Reader programs that we do this. So just wanted to let the board know about this. I want you to know I've reviewed this with our legal counsel. There's no problem with me being involved. It was actually felt like it was very positive from that perspective. So,
Madam Chair, do they pay for you to go to this?
They pay travel and food. That's all I get out of it.
What is STAR testing? Can you explain that to me?
So our STAR testing is an assessment that we do 2nd grade through 10th grade, or
And 11th.
11th and 12th. That's like Canyon. We do it 3 times a year for every student in that group, and then we use it for benchmark assessments beyond it. So we want to see, and we want our teachers to see, really, we want our teachers to be able to see the progress that students are making throughout the year. And so STAR testing is, we use it in math and English language arts. It's nationally, it's actually internationally, their big test. And I have some reports for STAR testing I plan to share with the board. So you can kind of see some of the stuff that we do with the results. We started STAR testing in this way 6 years ago.
Longer than that, because I was still principal.
7 years ago, somewhere in there, wasn't it?
Right?
Yeah.
Colleen's going more and more. She knows
So,
everything, but-
one of the reasons we like STAR testing and we went to it is because the state had screwed up their testing so bad that none of us could get any data out of it and understand it. And we were one of the districts that decided, let's just go a different route. Now, we still have to do the state testing, but I think it's been very successful for us. We get good reports. We actually, this year, they have a new reporting system that's quite an improvement and some helps for us as we go through that. But lots of kids take STAR tests, and your kids actually probably have scores that we can show you.
Yeah, I'm sure. Thank you.
Probably seen them, reports coming from Milepost. Remember the story about silverback learning? That's one of the pieces of data we have housed in the product called Milepost.
The Mion Reader.
Mion Reader is a computerized reading program, a library if you want to call it. And we use that at our elementary grades, middle school, and Black Canyon High School. We haven't introduced it to the high school, although I think someday we probably need to.
Some kids have licenses who are on special education.
And it's a graphic novels, I'll put it that way. Kids love it. We get a lot of reading out of it. Lots of reading. That's really what that's all about. One of the nice things is when you look at it from a support perspective is that it will also read the books to you. So if your kids that are learning how to read, it's a tremendous, there's really good research about being read the book. So you're seeing it on there. It actually follows it along and you can watch and read. And there's great pictures and pieces to it. It's the funny part about Renaissance and Mion, they're owned by a LLC. They're not a publicly traded company. But about a year ago, Renaissance bought Mion, the LLC, and Renaissance bought Mion. And about 4 months later, the LLC that owned Mion turned around and bought all of them back. So I think the LLCs have more money than they need. I'm just on. But they've been great products for us, and they're great companies, great partners with us in our education.
And if I could just add one thing, one of the benefits of relationships like that is we offer a summer Mion Cafe where all of our kids that come here to Black Canyon is one of the feeding stations for the community. So any child from, I think it's 2 through 18 can come and eat for free. And during that time, we have Chromebook setups for kids to come and read. And Mion provides licenses for kids who are there, who attend from outside of our district, no cost to anyone. They provide from preschool all the way up, and all summer long, those kids can read for free and at no cost to our district. Last year, we had kids from California and Maine and all over the U.S. that happened to be in Emmett one day, and they opened up a license for them, and that license they can use obviously while they're here getting food, but also they can use it all summer long wherever they happen to travel on a smartphone or another device. So they have supported our community very well.
One of the reasons we also went to Mion is we were struggling as a district having enough books for, I call it pathetic text. Somebody's got to change these days because I'm an old guy.
What we know is nonfiction. One of the changes required is that under the standards that came into place in the state of Idaho about 8 years ago, there was an increased requirement on what's called information text. And it's very expensive, and it's not something that our libraries in buildings house very much. And so this became an opportunity for us to open libraries of thousands and thousands of books to kids in a different way. We also continue to invest in our hard copy libraries, but this gives us an opportunity for our kids to have access to thousands of books that as a community we would never be able to afford on the shelf.
Probably more than one.
Yeah, it's not like I like it.
Mhm.
Or anything.
Is that all you had, Mr. Rush? Okay. All right, moving on. PERTA report.
The PERTA board meeting won't be until Friday, so there's no PERTA report this month. Next one, Mr. Hamilton will handle.
Okay. Moving on, board member input for future agenda items. Is there anything that would you like?
Yes, Madam Chair. Yesterday, what's today, Wednesday? So yesterday, I was contacted by our athletic director at Emmett High School to have some conversation. He is a very passionate being. We're lucky to have him. He is looking very seriously at trying to propose us as a school district to move back down to the 3A level from a sports standpoint. And I need to make sure that we get that put on the agenda. He is wanting me to have some dialogue with not only him and a couple of coaches, but also Mr. Carter, if he's available. He's not looking at this situation blindly. He understands that we're gonna incur some
Waves,
not just waves.
Jaws?
Yeah. So he's putting the legwork in and the time and effort to try and help our community and our children in that community. And he is wanting us to facilitate some dialogue amongst the four of us so that I can bring it back to the board and to Mr. Rush. Y'all need to be on board. So I just need to make sure that we propose to put that on the next agenda. He was very concerned this is a timely matter for him. He's been meeting with some ADs and getting some information, and he felt like this was something that he would really like to get done before the school year was out as far as having everything in place. He wants to form a committee to help with this, and he's just passionate and wanting to move forward. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Anybody have help you?
We're selecting an auditor. We're gonna go through that process. We're gonna have an opportunity to study that audit. A few months back, we had some training in how the budgeting system works and how the numbers all fit together and how the different categories work. I'm suggesting that we look at the opportunity of maybe having a training session where we can go over the audit and particularly the one that's current and kind of understand the notes and how the auditor actually does their job.
Sounds smart.
I'll look into that subject. Is there anything else? Okay. I need a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Oh, that's close. We better not.
Wait a minute there.
Only one person is allowed.
Okay, notes, please.
I almost blew up on her face.